All right, folks, what's up? I'm live here with OzWeinie. I found this gentleman on Facebook, and we originally had a chat about morality and abortion, but he wants to discuss specifically the subject of morality. So, with that said, let's get into it. So, your position is morality is subjective, correct?
Yeah, just a quick correction. It's OzWeinie because my last name is Osborne, so it's a long story, but that's not important. But yeah, my main position is that there is no purely objective morality, which I'm sure people watching know what that is. You obviously know what it is, but just in case anyone doesn't, that would mean that, well, this is wrong no matter what. Everybody should know this is wrong. This is the standard for right, and this is the standard for wrong. So, for an example, everyone should know murder is wrong. That's an objective moral. Everyone should have the same thing. Everyone should have that same moral. My thought process is that people learn and develop their own morals as they go through life and as they have different religions, different life experiences, different cultures, and that shapes their morals. And that's my position. So it would be subjective. So not everybody would think murder is wrong, even though I actually do. But that is my position, yes.
Well, I would not deny that there are certain subjective moral ethics which exist, like some parents believe in spanking their children, others don't. But you do hold, like you just said, if I'm understanding you correctly, that there are certain things which do exist, which at the very least appear to be objective, like rape, for example. That's never okay. Would you agree with that?
So me personally, I would agree that yes, rape in any instance, whether it's date rape, child rape, prison rape, gang rape, whatever type of rape you want to talk about. I personally, my moral code is that is absolutely hideous. I think that if you rape anybody in any fashion, you should be punished or go to prison in some manner. You have to be reprimanded, of course. Then now those are my morals that I have developed from talking to rape victims, studying it obviously in class, and being subjected to it in American media, and just knowing that it's plain wrong because it hurts people, and that would follow along my moral code. Whereas I think other cultures, such as perhaps in Africa, Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, they might take a different approach to quote unquote rape is wrong because they don't offer other people the same level of respect that we try to do in the Western world.
So you readily recognize things like rape is always wrong. Let me make sure I'm really, really understanding you and we're on the same page. That is true, right?
For me, yes, individually, I believe that rape is completely wrong. I would never ever condone rape, ever.
So, what morals would be subjective? Like, what would be an example of something that would be subjective in your opinion?
Well, even I mean, honestly, well, if you want to get into it, really, we could just stick to the rape thing because like I said before, would never condone rape. Would never believe that it's okay in any instant, no matter what. But if you were to go talk to a gentleman in South Africa or Niger or Nicaragua or South America, there are people that don't believe rape is wrong at all. And be it because they're sociopaths, psychopaths, have antisocial personality disorder, manic depression, or an issue with their psychobiology. There are people that don't believe rape is wrong. And that's because either they have a skewed moral code or they've developed their own through experiences, or they were raised up to believe that rape isn't wrong. So to wrap it up again, I do not think rape is okay. It's terrible. It's heinous. But there are people that exist in society that do believe rape is all right. And I think that reinforces moral subjectivity.
Well, that sounds like to me that's evidence that people have different opinions, not evidence that things like rape is actually morally subjective. Because it could be the case that there's some undiscovered standard out there which would tell us that things like rape is morally objectively wrong. So if it's even possible, then all we're talking about is just evidence of different opinions, not evidence that rape is subjective.
Yeah, well, I think we're kind of talking about the same thing here, but using different words. I think that, and I noticed it in the comments too. I think that people were saying things like, "Well, yeah, Jake, I believe that people have different opinions, but morality is not different." But I think that's a little disingenuous to say because if someone's willing to say, "Well, I think people have different opinions on the world, but the morals are all the same," that just can't be true because if they have different opinions, they might have different opinions on morals. And I'm, a huge believer in, nurture over nature. And I think that I don't know if it was Abraham Maslow or Pavlov or what psychologist said this. I'm going to butcher it, but someone said that if they had a child, they could raise that child to be anything they wanted to because you're a big part of your life and like the morals that I hold and the values that I hold were things that my mother and father, before they passed, instilled in me, said, okay, Jake, this is right, this is wrong. We're teaching you as a child until you're an adult. This is what's right, this is what's wrong. And then, you're constantly berated by the media. Yeah, rape is wrong, murder is wrong, you go to jail, this. So it's reinforced on you. But in other cultures, let's say the Middle East, for example, they will push you off a cliff if you're gay. Now, to me, that's insane to think of. I could never, ever imagine killing someone just because they're gay. But in their culture, from the time they're little, they're told, well, being gay is evil, and they deserve to die because they're gay. Now, if I told someone that in America, they would think that's insane. They would think that's morally, hideous, that's morally wrong. But if you talk to somebody in Saudi Arabia and say, well, do you think it's morally wrong to kill a gay person for being gay? They would say no, because their morals have been shaped ever since they were a child, and they literally can't know what's right and wrong because they have a totally different view of right and wrong.
Well, let's talk about what role the government plays in this because here's something that you said in the abortion discussion. I'm not trying to segue this into the abortion discussion, but you did say on what grounds does the government have to make that call? You want the government to make that decision. If that's not big government, I don't know what is. That's your quote.
Sure.
So what's the problem?
Well, I think so. I identify as I know people will think I'm crazy liberal, and I'm not, because the left pisses me off just as much as the right. I try to stay objective, but no one's objective. Everybody has bias, obviously, and I lean to the left. I mean, obviously, but my main premise of why I said that is because I think we talked about it a little earlier before we went live, is because I hear a lot of these conservatives and a lot of these people on the right, and their big mantra is, well, I don't like this big government. I don't either, but I don't like this big government. I don't like these taxes. They're forcing me to do this. They're forcing me to do that. Big government is control. Government has too much power. They're taking they're restricting our guns. They're restricting free speech. They're putting taxes on literally everything we do. And I can't handle this big government. But when you talk about abortion, all of a sudden, these conservatives are like, well, you know what? Maybe the government should force women to have babies. Maybe there should be no choice. And I'm not all conservatives believe that. Some believe in cases of rape, incest, that the woman, or if the woman's life is in danger, that she has the right to have an abortion. But I just thought it was hypocritical to say, well, I don't want this big, powerful government, but some of these conservatives would then force a woman, if she's impoverished or unable to take care of the baby or sick or poor or whatever, the government would then force her, no, you're having this baby no matter what because we're telling you to, and if you don't, we're going to punish you. And that sounds like a dictatorship to me, and that sounds terrifying.
So let's check this out. If you have someone in society or a biological parent taking care of a newborn baby, would you say that the government having having laws on that to be an obligation for that person to take care of that child is forcing them to take care of that child?
Let me make sure. I think I have a really good answer to your question, but let me make sure I understand it correctly so I don't put my foot in my mouth. What you're saying is, for example, like I'm a man, so if I get a girl pregnant, I now have an obligation to take care of that child, at least financially, for 18 years. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I mean is if a biological parent or other takes care of a newborn, would you say that the government having laws that a parent or other, whether it be a guardian of some sort, an adopted parent or whatever, would you say that the government having obligations for those people to take care of that child? Would you say the government is forcing them to take care of that child?
I think I understand your question now. Um, I guess a part of me wants to say yes. A part of me wants to say that I feel like, but I feel like it's your duty though. I feel like if you want to have, I have an opinion on that. To me, I don't think everybody should be able to have children. I don't think that you should be able to just have as many kids as you want and create all these little kids that need food and need water and need to be taken care of. And then you go fucking leave those kids. Sorry to swear, but you just go leave those kids to the state to take care of, and they have terrible lives. And I think that the government saying they have an obligation is okay because once you have once you've taken the obligation that you're going to raise a child, you're not going to have an abortion. I want this kid. I had sex to have this kid. We planned to have this kid, or we didn't, but we decided to keep this kid. We're going to take care of this kid or these kids. And then the kid is born and they're in your family. Then, I think it's okay for the government to say, you know what? Yeah, you're not allowed to just let these kids starve and leave them on the street. You owe some obligation to take care of these kids, or I guess you could give them up for adoption to the state, even though that would kind of suck, I think. But I also believe, and this might be a little out of left field, but as a man, one of the big reasons why I don't want to have kids right now, at least, or I might not never want kids, but a big reason I don't want to get married or have kids is because I feel like women, and I don't mean to go off base here, get off the topic, but I think it all ties together. I think that women have a lot more rights to the kid than a man does. And a woman could say, well, we're not going to keep this kid. I'm going to have an abortion. And if I don't want that, I have no choice. She's going to probably have that abortion. I don't really get to make that decision. I have input, but she's going to do probably what she wants. And I feel like that's unfair to the man if he really wants to keep the kid. So what I think is, if a man gets a girl pregnant and he does not want to be a father, he should be able to say, okay, I waive my parental rights to this child. I want nothing to do with this child. I will sign away all rights to this child. I will never see the child. I don't want anything to do with the child, but I'm not paying child support. I'm not going to do that. I did not want this kid. You wanted it. You decided to keep it. It was your choice. We did both choose to have sex, but we did not want to, one of us wanted a kid, one of us didn't. So I waive my rights, and I will not be paying child support to this child. So I think that's something that should be done, because I think men get, excuse my language, I think they get fucked a lot of times by that. Sorry to go off on that little rant there at the end, but I just thought it all kind of tied in.
So what I'm getting at is this. When a parent or guardian decides to take care of a child, is the government forcing them to do that or not?
When a parent or guardian, I don't think so. I think that if a parent or guardian is willingly, if they say, yeah, we're going to take care of this baby to the best of our ability, I wouldn't say the government is forcing them to, because they could have given up. They could have given the baby up for adoption, or they could have had an abortion, but they made a decision and said, we're going to keep this baby. So I think that's out of their own set of morals, their own obligation, their own quote unquote love, that they decided to take care of it. So I don't think that's the government forcing them to do that. I think it would be forcing them to do that if a woman got pregnant and she had absolutely no choice what to do, and the government said, no, whatever, you have no choice, you decided to have sex, so oops, too bad, now you have a baby, so now you have to take care of this child no matter what, sorry, no choice. I think that would be the government controlling them. The other, what you talked about, I think, is just people wanting to give a kid a good life and deciding that that's what they wanted to do.
Well, you do understand that in places in the United States, they have these things called safe haven laws. What that basically means is when a newborn child is here, within about 30 days or so, a woman can take that child to any sort of place, whether it be certain police stations, would be certain hospitals, places like this, and just literally just drop the baby off, and there would be no charge to her whatsoever. She won't get in trouble or anything. That's legal in a lot of places in the United States. They're called safe haven laws. Now, that's the extent of the obligation she has. Because once the child is born, is to make sure at the very least to get that child to a safe haven location. That's the extent of the obligation she has. After that, she has no further obligation whatsoever. Do you think the government should allow women to be able to have that right to do that?
Well, I think that we actually did talk about that in my sociology class. Thank you for bringing that up, the safe haven laws. I remembered it when you talked about the churches, because we read case studies about young women who were 14, 15, 16 and were scared of their parents freaking out on them, throwing them out. So they say, well, we're going to have the baby, but I can't take care of this child. So what I'll do is I'll drop it off at a church, or I'll take it somewhere where it can be safe. So what you're asking me is, do I think that women should have that option, the safe haven option? Is that what you're asking, right?
Yes.
I think, to your point, and I'm going to speculate that you're pro-life. I think that that's a good. I think that that's a good option. I think for especially people that are pro-life, it means less abortions, and it also gives the woman the opportunity to, the opportunity to say, well, I had this baby, but I don't have to take care of it. I'm not financially weighed down. The baby may or may not have a good life moving forward, but it may or may not have had a good life staying with me anyway. But that's one less abortion. So I would think that that's a good thing. I don't know if that's legal everywhere. I would hope that that gets moved to be legal everywhere. I could see an issue with babies just being dropped off everywhere on the corners of like police stations and churches. But I guess the baby's at least born. So for someone that's pro-life like you, that's got to be a win, because it's not killed.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you agree, and you do, that women should be able to have that right, now once she drops that baby off at the police station, the hospital, or wherever it's appropriate and legal for her to drop the kid off at, someone in society has to take care of that child. So basically, we're dealing with a situation to where someone in society is forced to take care of the kid. Now, you told me earlier that you was against the government forcing things, but we have a situation of force here now that we're dealing with this situation of this newborn being dropped off.
Well, I don't think anyone's forced to take care of it, because I guess if it's a legal thing that a woman can drop a baby off at a church, there's nothing. I mean, is there really anything stopping that church from saying, well, fuck this baby, we don't want to keep it? What if they don't keep records? I mean, how accurate are the records? I mean, honestly, let's think about it for a second. Like, if we're, maybe not me and you, because we might have different, who knows? But if some random girl, some 14-year-old girl, has a baby and just drops it off in front of a steeple at a church or something, and I mean, who's there to enforce that? Who's there to say, who's there to actually make them pick up that baby and take it in and give it a good life? What's stopping them from taking it and throwing it in the dumpster, or taking it and saying, fuck this, and doing whatever? I mean, a big argument I always hear is, once women have the baby, and this is where, sometimes conservatives, it seems, maybe it's not always true, and I know it's not always true, because my father was very conservative and he didn't think like this, and I'm assuming you don't either, but I don't know that. It appears that conservatives really, really, really want the baby to be born, but once it's born, it seems like the compassion goes away, because a lot of these women are poor, they can't take care of the baby, then they got to go on food stamps, welfare, that costs the state a tremendous amount of money. I hear people that complain about, how much abortions cost, or if their taxes do or don't go to it for Medicaid or whatever purposes. But it costs the state so much money to take care of a child from age 0 to 18, because not a lot of kids get adopted. A lot do, but a lot spend their whole life, or at least 18 years, excuse me, in the system, which costs the taxpayers costs a ton of money to do that. Now, we can argue all day on whether or not money is more important than saving these kids' lives, but I think we all know what's more important to the government. So I don't really know. I don't know if there's an obligation for these places to actually take care of these babies once they're dropped off. You've avoided the abortion, but I don't know if you've avoided giving the child a terrible life. I don't think that can be avoided in those cases sometimes.
Here's the thing: if someone in society isn't obligated to take care of that child, then what you're telling me is nobody is obligated to take care of a newborn child, and newborn babies can just be discarded.
Sorry. Well, I mean, I'm not saying that they should be discarded. I don't think that that's what should happen because, like I said before, my morals would say I don't think that's okay. I don't think you should. I don't think you. I don't think you should take a baby and just throw it and say fuck this. I'm not taking care of it. But if a woman is, let's say, no, not a woman, let's say a girl, because women can get, or girls can get pregnant at around 12, 13 nowadays. 13, poor, from the hood, no access to any type of birth control, no money, could never take care of this child adequately, has the baby, realizes, listen, I'm gonna have the baby, I'm not gonna have an abortion, so that's okay. I'm all for that if she wants that, if that's her choice. But she thinks to herself, well, I'll just go to a safe haven and I'll give this baby to the church or the police station, or and as much as and she does do that. She goes and she gives it to the police or the church or whatever. I'm not familiar with the laws as you are. There might be other places, maybe foster homes. I'm not sure. But what I'm saying is she's done the right thing at that point. At least she didn't get. I mean, at least to you guys, because you're pro-life, so the abortion was avoided. So now the child is alive. But as you know and I know, a baby cannot take care of itself. But what I'm saying is, who's there to force these people to take care of this child? And what I'm talking about is, again, back to what I said earlier, this subjective morality of these places. I don't know if you know how foster homes are, but for the most part, they're really not that good. They don't treat kids very good. Some of them do, but there's so many stories of molestation and rape and beatings and terrible things going on in foster homes because kids are just numbers. And do I wish that on any kid? No, but I can't control what others do. So back to your point, do I think that no babies are obligated to be taken care of? I don't know. I mean, I don't know who enforces that. I mean, who enforces that? I mean, does the government enforce that? Does God enforce that? I mean, I don't really know, to be honest. I don't think that those institutions, if they're filled to capacity, I don't know that they can make that moral decision. I don't know that there might be decisions where children are left to the wayside, and that probably happens every day. So I don't personally think that babies should be cast to the wayside if they're born, because I know that kids can't take care of themselves. But then again, that's just what I think. That's not what these people might think.
What I'm telling you, man, is if nobody is obligated to take care of a newborn child, then that newborn will be just left to die.
Essentially, yes. I mean, if that's what your premise, if that's what you're asking me, if no one is obligated to take care of this baby, then yeah, sure. Then the baby would be left to die, or it would be left up to the state. But I mean, the state is not obligated. Well, I guess the state is somewhat obligated if you put the baby up for adoption. I'm not saying nobody should be obligated to make sure the baby makes it from point A to point B. I'm not saying that the baby can't be born and given to the state to take care of. That's not optimal. Of course, optimal would be being born to an upper middle class family in the suburbs with a mom and dad, but that ain't gonna happen. That didn't happen for me. It ain't gonna happen for a lot of people. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, yeah, giving them to the state has a legal, not moral, but legal obligation to take care of the kid from A to B, from 0 to 18. And then that's it. It's a cruel world. So that's about it. I mean, because at that point, when does the caring stop? Because I mean, these places will take care of you till you're 18, but these people, these young adults, they're not equipped to take care of themselves at 18. They have nothing. So they could easily go out and die at 18 or 0 or 1 years old or 2 years old. So I don't really, I don't know exactly.
What I'm telling you, man, is if nobody is obligated to take care of that kid, then that baby will just be left to die. But if someone is obligated to take care of that kid, then someone has the obligation forced upon them somewhere.
Well, if someone has the obligation to take care of the kid, um, well, you're correct in that regard. It's either their own obligation, all right? They either had the baby and said, well, this is my obligation. I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to raise this kid. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to love him, take care of him. Or the state legally is like, okay, well, we're going to take this kid and we're going to take care of him. And then that'll be it. When he turns 18, we'll do whatever. But I mean, do I think? I mean, I think what your question is getting around is because we talked about the government enforcing this, and I think that's where your question is derived from. Do I? I mean, I'll answer my own question to myself. Do I think that the government should force people to be obligated to take care of these kids? I mean, the answer honestly is no. I mean, I don't really think that it's the government's place to. It's hard to answer that because it sounds like a piece of shit. It sounds like, oh, just let these kids be born and let them die. I mean, I don't want that personally, but I feel like, the government saying, oh, like holding a gun to me and saying, you know what, either take responsibility for this baby, even though we already have 7.5 billion people on this planet, take responsibility for this baby or go to jail or face the consequences. I think there should be an institution in place, like you said, safe havens. But like I said, what's stopping these people from making the decision that they don't want this kid? Babies are very vulnerable. Once they're born, they're pretty much up to it's pretty much up to the discretion of the mother, father, and society what happens to the baby, because the baby's got no ability to take care of itself, and that might pull on some people's heartstrings and make them want to adopt and make them want to do safe havens and other things like that. And for other people, they might just say, well, fuck it. Who cares? It's not my baby. So I don't know. I don't think I even answered your question. I'm not sure.
Here's the thing, man. If nobody is obligated to take care of this child, these children would just be left to die. So we're dealing with crazy situation here. If you say that the government shouldn't force anybody to do it, then the logical conclusion is these babies should be left to die if nobody takes care of them, if nobody's obligated to take care of them, because the government is not forcing anybody, or rather shouldn't force anybody by what you're saying. So these babies should be left to die. That's the logical conclusion your position leads to.
Well, I don't think it just leads to that. I mean, it's just because people aren't forced to take care of a child doesn't mean that they will. That they won't. Excuse me, that they won't. Just because the government doesn't hold a gun to you and say, "Well, you're obligated to take care of this kid," doesn't mean that they will do that. I mean, you could just because the government forces. Let's say what you said, what you were going off of. If the government or some other entity does not enforce an obligation, right, to take care of these kids, then the natural logical conclusion is, well, no one's going to take care of these kids, right? They're just going to die. I mean, there's some truth in that. I agree, but there's also, there's a bit of false information in that too, because I mean, just because the government wouldn't, let's say they did enforce you to take care of a kid, doesn't mean you're going to. I mean, doesn't mean you're going to. I mean, there are still going to be people out there that say, well, fuck you. I'm not going to take care of this kid. Put me in jail. Let this kid die. There are going to be people like that. There are going to be people that say, no, the government is not going to force me or scare me into taking care of a child I didn't want. What happens to this child, I care very little about. And that's the end of the story. And you can take that as, well, that person's a piece of shit and they're evil. And I guess the government could say, well, going to jail then. But regardless, the kid gets no care. So I don't think you can force morality onto people. Or even let's say the government does force these people to take care of their kids. Do you really want parents that don't want a kid to take care of a kid because if they didn't want the kid, they're not going to treat it very good. They're going to do the bare minimum. So I think either way, the kid's life is in jeopardy, whether or not the government says, yes, take care of this kid, or you're going to be in trouble, or they say no. Because I just can't imagine a young couple that do not like kids and do not want kids and who are poor and on drugs taking very good care of a child, even if the government says they have to. We see it every day in places like Chicago and New York.
Well, so what you're telling me is your whole argument is predicated on the willingness of some people out there to take care of a child. Because if nobody is actually obligated to take care of a newborn child, then your argument hinges on just the willingness of somebody out there, right? That's literally the only sort of reach that your argument has, is that somebody out there might be willing to do it, but nobody out there is required to do it, correct?
Yeah, I mean that's the reality of the world we live in. I mean that's the I hate to use the word fact because fact, but that is the reality we already live in. We already live in a reality where not to give you a sob story or anything because I don't fucking expect anyone to feel bad for me, but both my parents didn't give a fuck about me. My dad died heroin overdose last year. We never really met like 4 times. Mom was never in my life really, meth addict, whatever. But my aunt and uncle decided to say, hey, I'm going to take care of this kid. And now I'm doing pretty good, but whatever. But they weren't morally obligated to do that, but they just decided to do that. But I could have easily been tossed to the wayside and left to die or left in the state, which I guess I wouldn't have liked. But we already live in that world. We already live in the world where no one's obligated to take care of a kid. You're just waiting on someone to do so, because the only institution that's really obligated to quote unquote take care of a kid is the state, where they are awarded, whatever amount of money to let this kid survive from age 1, whatever, if you put him in the foster home at 1 to 18. But there's nothing stopping a family from having a kid and saying, well, fuck this, and getting an abortion, or having a kid and saying, well, fuck this, and treating them like shit, not giving them anything. We see it every day. Or having a kid and being like, well, I'm just going to put it up for adoption. Forget this. Or I'm just going to leave it on the side of the road. Or I'm going to give it to a sanctuary city. Or I'm going to kill it like Casey Anthony did. There's really nothing stopping these people besides the law, for murder and stuff like that, obviously, Casey Anthony. But we already live in a world where you're just counting on people to take care of these kids. You're hoping the parents love the kid enough to take care of it. And you're hoping that the sanctuary city works out. But really, it's all up in the air, isn't it? Because you never really know what's going to happen. The kid could get killed in foster care. So I think we already live in that world that you're saying my premise generates.
I agree 100% that we do live in a world to where there will be someone out there willing to take care of all children that gets in that sort of situation. But doesn't that go against your point that when children get born, nobody just cares about them? You told me earlier that you have pro-lifers who just argue for the kid to be born, nobody cares. But you just told me that somebody out there in the world would care and take care of that kid. So why in the world would you say that earlier, but then tell me this now?
Well, I never said that there wasn't anyone that would take care of the kid. What I'm saying, what I was talking about is I'm talking about these conservative people that I get into arguments with who will fight tooth and nail for the unborn baby's rights. Correct? They really want this baby born. But yet we have record numbers of people going into the foster care system and children being left, like you said, in sanctuary cities and impoverished neighborhoods and all kinds of stuff. So, where are these people when these babies are born? Where are all these people? Because usually what happens is I notice, and this is not the case for everybody, but what I tend to notice is a lot of these really, it's usually the right, even though I'm not trying to only bash the right here, but it's pretty obvious that the right is pro-life and the left is pro-choice at this point. So it's a lot of people on the right that will really, really fight for the rights of this baby until it's born. And then it seems like once it's born, I don't see any of these marches, for all these abortion marches and all these posts about abortion and stuff. But these same people that want these babies born so bad would restrict women's access to birth control, would restrict women's access to Plan B, would restrict welfare recipients, or food stamps. They don't want their taxes going to these things. They don't want their taxes going to these young mothers who can't afford to take care of their baby. But that's the reality you get into. That's the situation. If you want this kid born, someone's going to have to pick up the tab. And it's going to have to be the taxpayer, because unfortunately, young poor mothers have babies and they can't afford to take care of them. And they might go to the state, they might get taken care of, or they might not. And they're going to have to go on some form of government assistance. And government assistance is a big no-no to the right. They don't really like that very much. So my point was, if you're going to fight that hard for the unborn baby to be born, once it's born, help the families that are going to take care of it by helping with government assistance, because that's what's going to help the kid and help the families of these young kids that are poor and have babies. And there's a lot of people on the right that they want to restrict access to birth control. Well, not a lot. There are quite a few, actually. Maybe not those that watch Prager or those in this live chat. I don't even know who's here. But more birth control means less abortions. More birth control means less unwanted pregnancies. More girls on birth control, yeah, it means more sex, which is absolutely fine, but it means less abortions, because if they're on birth control, they're not going to get pregnant, or they'll get pregnant a lot less, which means less hasty abortions, less 13-year-olds running to Planned Parenthood and getting abortions. So I think if you're going to fight for the rights of this unborn baby, you need to fight for these other things too that supplement the care of the baby once it's born, or prevent these abortions from even happening. Because I am pro-choice. I've said before I'm pro-abortion, which I meant I was pro-choice. But most people aren't really fans of all these abortions. Most people would like to see these babies get a chance to grow up, because who knows, it might be the next, doctor or whatever, president, who knows. But I think you have to support both options. You can't just say, well, let's get the baby out no matter what, and then let society handle the rest. Well, we have to do both.
Well, check this out. I can easily contest this idea that pro-lifers don't care about children once they're born, but I want to take this in a slightly different direction. Are you implying that if one claims to be pro-choice, that they don't have to give a crap about children that are born?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, to me, what pro-choice means is, exactly what it means. To me, what pro-choice means is I support, a woman, or men can't have babies, so not men, but I support, the woman's right to say, I don't want to have this kid. I cannot take care of this kid. I'm not a responsible mother. I'm too young. I have no money. I live in a bad neighborhood. There's no way I'll ever, I can't afford what's going on right now.
Just real quick. And why are you connecting this to pro-lifers? Because you're saying, oh, pro-lifers don't give a crap about the kid once born. It's like you're suggesting that the pro-choicers don't have to, or they do when the kid is born.
Well, no, I don't mention that, because most pro-choice people are also in favor of these government programs that pay for the baby, that say, okay, yeah, my tax dollars, yeah, they can go towards abortions. Yeah, my tax dollars can go to welfare. Yeah, they can go to food stamps. They can go to WIC and these government programs that help young people that have babies that need the government assistance. So I didn't say that because most people that are pro-choice are also pro-government assistance. But most people that are pro-life that I've come into contact with, maybe you're not one of them. I don't mean to pigeonhole you at all. But most people that I come into contact with that are pro-life are anti-government assistance for these families, because they don't want their tax dollars going towards these quote unquote lazy, irresponsible mothers. I mean, I've heard that quote many times. So that's why I didn't mention the pro-choicers as that they have to care about kids, because they already do, because they already support, most of them at least already support these government programs that benefit the child if the mother and father aren't able to take care of them. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. I mean, these government programs help these kids. And like I said before, if you're going to support the baby's right to be born, you have to support the institutions and programs that help keep families together and help support the baby. And it's a lot more than just get a job. They have to, if you're 13, you can't just go get a job. So you know what I mean? So that's why I didn't mention that. I think I may have went over that too quickly and came off in the wrong way.
So you're telling me pro-choice people are the ones running these adoption centers to put these children into loving parents' hands. Last time I checked, most of these adoption centers are ran by religious and Christian entities, not pro-life organizations.
No, that's not what I said. I don't know. Pro-choice people aren't the ones running these institutions, and a lot of foster homes aren't ran by the religious; they're ran by the state. But some are ran by the religious. You're right, but not all. A lot of them are run by the state. So no, I didn't. No, I didn't say that. I said that pro-choice people support the government program.
That's incorrect. They may get funding from the state, but that doesn't mean that they're ran by the state.
Yeah, but
If you do your research, sir, you'll find that a lot of these places are religious based, or Christian based. You won't find, like liberal slash pro-choice organizations putting their hand on dealing with these situations most of the time.
No, but like I told you before, they're funded by the state. That means they're ran by the state. The money comes from the state. Now it comes from
no, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they're run by the state. You can get funding from the state. That doesn't mean it's run by the state. That's not how it works. For example, Planned Parenthood can get funding from the state. That doesn't mean the state runs Planned Parenthood. This isn't disputable, dude.
Well, I mean, this conversation wasn't supposed to be about abortion in general, but no, what I'm saying is
I'm just telling you that's incorrect. And if you are going to go down that line of thinking, you just be flat out wrong.
These pro-choice people, they don't have to. They support the government programs. That's the point. These religious entities might support the adoption centers and foster homes, but there are plenty that are funded completely by the state that these religious entities could not fund without the state money. Without the state money, without the taxpayers' money, they couldn't do the work they do. And that's funded by taxpayers, and that's funded by the state. And the money is what's important because the money is what keeps it running. Without the money, there's no point in doing it because you can't operate without the money. And the reason I didn't mention these pro-choice organizations that help with these babies and stuff is because, like I mentioned before, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, based off my experience, it seems to me that the right, the religious right in particular, are not for these government programs. They do not like this welfare system. They do not like these quote unquote handouts that our taxes give to these people. But that's the reality of the world we live in. That is required nowadays for a lot of these families to just survive. That's required for a lot of these families to make it. I've got friends that just had babies and they're in their 20s. They have 2 jobs and yeah, they need WIC. They need food stamps. They need these things to take care of their baby because they decided to take on the responsibility of having the baby. So thank God the government is giving them some money to help out so the baby can flourish and the baby can have food and the baby can have diapers. But you take that funding away, that baby's life is in jeopardy. So I don't understand. That's what I meant. You have to support these government programs. It's very important to support both. You can support the baby's right to be alive, but once it's born, then what? You have to support other things besides just finding it a home, besides just putting it in a foster care, besides just giving it to a church. The money's got to come from somewhere. And if a bunch of people say, well, we're not going to give our tax dollars to the state, we're not going to give it to these programs, we're not going to give it to these agencies like you mentioned, these religious agencies, that's going to put a huge strain on the system. Because if these places got no money from the state, even though you say they're not run by the state, that's fine, whatever. If they have no money and they're just relying purely on donations, that's a huge cut in their revenue, and that's a problem.
Well, there's a number of points you're incorrect on. Number one, the only reason why the state has money at all is because people pay taxes. That's the first thing. And number two, if you look at a lot of places like crisis pregnancy centers and places like this, they help mothers with their children. And many of these entities are run by Christian centered organizations, which typically don't get little to no funding from the government. Most of these places are run by private donations anyway. So it's not true to say that you don't have people who are pro-life who don't care about these mothers and these children after they're born. That's just absolutely not true. But even if you're going to talk about the funding is coming from the people anyway. And the overall majority of people who live in countries like the United States who are paying these taxes are people who are of religious belief anyway. They're not, most of the people you find that live in the United States are not atheists. So to suggest that you have like pro-choice people pretty much mostly talking about taking care of these, like funding things to take care of these children, it's just not true. And on top of that, a lot of people who claim to be conservative are against welfare programs to help people per se. They're against the abuse of those programs. They don't want those programs abused because it wears on the system if they're abused. There's a lot of people who are very, very irresponsible who are able-bodied to work, and they abuse the system, and they make it more difficult for people who do really need the help to be able to get the money because in recent years, food stamp benefits have had to be decreased because of the plethora of abuse in these programs. And it's not the pro-choice people doing anything about these abuses.
Well, I don't think we're in a position to do anything about these abuses. There's always going to be people out there that abuse the system. And I say, if I was getting food stamps today, how am I going to enforce Johnny down the road? How do I know what he's doing with his food stamps? I have no control over that. And by the way, everybody pays taxes, dude, not just the religious right, not just the Christians. If you don't pay taxes, you go to jail. So everybody's paying taxes.
I know that. I'm saying
so
most of the people, what I told you is most of the people who do pay taxes are typically those of religious beliefs, since there's very, very few atheists that live in the country as opposed to those who have religious beliefs.
Yeah, they have religious beliefs, but not all religious beliefs follow the same dogma. I mean, we have Catholics, Protestants, Christians, and
right.
I mean, my father was a Christian, but hold on, my father was a Christian, but you know what? Christians fight all the time about certain things because they disagree all the time on how to interpret the Bible. So I hear the term "not a real Christian" all the time. So, and just because someone ascribes to be religious, that does not mean they really practice their religion. You can go to church and not be a good person. So there are plenty of people that ascribe to be religious and they pay taxes like everybody else, and that don't mean shit. So there are a lot of good people that pay taxes that are religious. My dad was one of them, or my uncle, excuse me, was one of them. But there are plenty of people who don't, who aren't that religious, or are, or pretend to be religious, or just, I don't know, they want this label on them for some reason. I think it makes them look good. I don't know why. And then everybody pays taxes though. So I mean, that's not really for dispute. If you don't pay taxes, you go to jail. So yeah, I mean, I don't understand how we got from objective morality to this abortion thing, because I mean, I don't care that much about abortion. I mean, I have my opinions on it. Obviously I care a little bit because I'm having this discussion with you. I think it's a good discussion. I think you're pretty smart. I like this discussion, but I don't really want to have a long conversation about abortion. That's not why I came here.
Okay, but I want to focus on one more thing.
That's
and
fine.
This is whole notion that you said that people who are pro-life tend to not care about children once they are born. What I'm asking you is this very simple question. If someone claims to be pro-choice, would it matter if they did not care about born children? Would it matter to you?
I think the word pro-choice is significantly only about the abortion issue. That's what pro-choice and pro-life means. Pro-life means I'm pro-preserving the life of this fetus. Pro-choice means I'm pro-choosing the death of this fetus. And I'm pro-choosing the life or death of the fetus because the woman's choice. And I don't mean that every pro-life person doesn't give a hoot about babies when they're born. I've just had the unfortunate experience of interacting with plenty of pro-life people that when I mentioned that, well, my friend needs food stamps, my friend's on WIC, my friend's on this, my friend's on that, I got kind of this attitude from them, like, oh, well, they shouldn't need that. They should have known better not to have sex. They shouldn't have. Well, then they should have found another an adoption agency or something. It's like, well, you know what? That's not your fucking decision to make. It's their decision. It's their baby. It's not yours.
Well, your experience doesn't account for the overwhelming majority of people.
That's right. No, that's
argue for this issue, and because you may have had experience with people who have twisted views, does not mean that pro-life people, as a general view, don't care about born children. They may not believe in the same ideals you do to take care of born children, but that doesn't mean they don't care. You don't know what people do in their private lives.
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, I mean, my experiences overall have been negative, but that's not indicative of the whole population. But when I say that my experiences with pro-life people is that they tend to not give a hoot once the baby's born, that's my experiences. I'm not saying that that's everybody. It's obviously not, or we'd have a bunch of babies laying on the street dead. That's obviously not the case. Plenty of people care about babies. My experience, however, has been that these people tend to really want to fight tooth and nail for the baby to be born, and then they seem to be like, oh well, now it's born, so okay, my part's.
That's like you're telling me that if they do care about born babies, then they could magically justify killing unborn ones. If they care about the born children, oh, then it's okay to kill the ones that are unborn. So that's perfectly fine if we reverse it.
Are you talking? Hold on, are you talking about pro-choice people right now or pro-life?
I'm talking about pro-choice people because you made a case that it's like a lot of pro-choice people who do care about these born children. So basically, you're telling me that if they care about these born children, it's perfectly fine for them to justify killing unborn ones, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. I think that they care about these government programs that fund and help these young mothers and these young people because they're pro-choice. They know the struggle of the decision to have an abortion. It's not something girls usually go to the doctor that they're happy about. Most girls don't have abortions and then leave with a sucker in their mouth, skipping down the road. They're not very happy. It's a hard decision to make. It's a very difficult decision to make. I don't feel like it's my job to tell a woman to make that decision.
So you care about born children, therefore you don't have to care about unborn children being killed. You don't have, because you care about these children, you don't have to care about these children over here.
I feel like the alive children are a lot more important than the ones that are in the womb, because the alive children are the ones that are already sucking the money out of the system, and the alive children are the ones that already need to be taken care of with food, and the alive children are the ones that are already alive and outside of the womb.
Wait. What do you mean alive? Are they dead in the womb?
I mean, walking. I mean, outside of the womb. Yes, I think beyond being a fetus, beyond being a bunch of cells and a zygote. I believe that there's a huge difference between a 2-year-old child starving on the street that can't get food and a girl that got pregnant and a month later this little zygote thing is in her stomach and she decides to get it removed. I think those are two huge things. I think that if you had to make the decision between watching a 2-year-old on the street die of starvation or killing a zygote inside of a woman's belly, you would be absolutely horrendous to choose to kill the 2-year-old, because it feels a lot more than a zygote. I mean,
let's say a woman is delivering and you only see the head. She's in mid-delivery. The kid isn't clearly outside the womb all the way. Are you saying that she could still kill the kid then because it's not all the way outside the womb?
Well, no, it's not. It's not a zygote at that point. It's a person. It's actually out. It's actually a fully developed baby. I mentioned on the Facebook comment that I might be pro-choice, but there's a point to where I say no. Like you can't have an abortion the day before your baby's born. I've made cases where I've said that no, I don't know the timeline. Like I said, I didn't come here to talk about abortion, so I don't know the timeline of when a baby is officially not a little clump of cells and a zygote and officially fully developed. But
so you don't know, but you have some sort of position on it, and you don't even know all the facts.
Well, I don't know exactly when the baby is fully developed. No, I don't know. I don't know if it's 9 weeks. I don't know exactly when the baby is fully developed.
But you just gave me a position on choice, though, dude. You just gave me a position on choice, but you don't even know how to even argue it. Why would you have a position and you don't even know how to argue it, and you don't even know the facts enough to have an informed opinion?
I don't think that I need to reinforce this at all. I think that I'm pro-choice because I know that I don't think the government and me or you have any right to go tell a woman, yes, you're having that baby no matter what. I'm forcing you to have that child. You had sex. Now you have to suffer the consequences of having that child. That's not our place to say. It's not the government's place to say. And it's not the religious people's place to say, because our government is not a religious entity. So no, I don't think I need this exuberant amount of knowledge. There are people out there. There are laws in place for this. There are plenty of states that cut off abortion at a certain week. There are plenty of states have a cutoff point. You can't just have an abortion the day before your fucking baby's born. You know that's not true. You can't have that. It's never happened. It's never happened. It does not happen.
Let me ask you this. Since you want to talk about morality, would you be interested?
Yeah, let's go back to morality.
Would you be interested in inviting more people in here so we can have a more robust discussion instead of us two? Would you be interested in that?
Yeah, I mean, how long are we going to be in here? I mean, I'm pretty awake, but I mean, yeah, sure.
I mean, as long as you want, man.
Okay, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, bring them in here. I mean, as long as you're not going to ambush me with a bunch of people on one side.
No, that's not how it's going to work. It's going to be a fair exchange. That's not how I run my hangouts. It's not going to be like that. I'm not going to be tacking a bunch of people on to you.
All right, I'm okay with it. Do what you got to do. It's fine.
Okay. So what would you say is the basis for your moral foundation?
Could you repeat that question, please? Someone just ran by my dorm room. I couldn't hear you.
Yes. What would you say is the basis for your moral foundation?
Well, I'd say life experiences I went through, enforced by my parents a little bit. Honestly, my parents were, and my parents, my aunt, and my uncle, they're a lot better people than I am. They have way different morals than I do. But then again, they're my aunt and uncle. They're not my biological parents. Um, I'd say what shaped my moral frame was really the events that shaped my life, the things I went through. As a young child, like I said, my mother really wasn't around, father wasn't around, got dumped, left places all the time. Aunt and uncle took me in, which I'm forever grateful for. Dad overdosing and dying. Just rough experiences at a young age helped me grow up really quick and realize what a real problem is and what's not a problem. I saw my friends think that they had hard lives and they had no idea what really hard was. Going through experiences was the big thing that really shaped my moral frame because it helped me look at okay, why is this right and why is this wrong? It really the experiences overall. It's nothing I learned. It's nothing I read. I wouldn't say that laws really enforced that moral frame on me at all because I don't know. I just growing up, I was able to just look at what I thought was right for me. And what other people thought was right for them was different than me. And I thought that was fine. I was like, okay, you disagree. You think that's okay. I don't think it's okay, but whatever. So really it's all about experiences. I wasn't raised religious. So I didn't have I didn't have morals from a religiosity put on me at a young age, such as don't take the Lord's name in vain or don't, commit adultery or things like that. Those things I had to figure out on my own, just by going through the experience of life.
Okay, so the basis for your morality is experience. So if someone else had a different experience, you'd say that they would have a different set of moral foundations, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say someone has a different set of moral foundations in like first world countries like the United States, for example. If their moral experiences and foundations tell them that rape is okay, and yours says otherwise, which one of you two are correct?
Are you saying if I'm in America and America's overall majority seems to be that the consensus is that rape is wrong, which it is in America, and my opinion is it's not. Who's right?
Yes. Who's right between you two?
I say, I mean, there's I mean, it's going to be hard to say this because societal view will say the society's right because the laws that are in place and the majority think this way, so they would think that they're right. But honestly, you could never tell that person that they're wrong because even though I think it's wrong, they're never going to listen to you because their moral compass isn't like that. They just don't view it like that. I always use the example of, excuse me, where I grew up. It was wrong to sell drugs, right? Like you don't sell heroin to people. That's kind of fucked up. It's kind of, to me, I'm like, oh, my dad died of a heroin overdose. So to me, I'm kind of like, maybe not sell heroin to people. That's kind of where I wouldn't do that. But I bet if I asked some kid from Chicago who's been slinging dope on the streets ever since he was 5, he would be like, selling heroin is fine. Sucker's born every day. I'm just trying to make some money. And that's the exact thing I just told you, experiences. I have the experience of heroin killing my father. The kid in Chicago has the experience of heroin paying for his new shoes. So one of us thinks heroin is terrible. The other one thinks, well, hey, it's fine. It doesn't, no skin off my back. It's how I make money. So yeah, experiences can, especially at a young age, because you're very impressionable at a young age, can shape the person you end up becoming.
So the person who has the view that rape is wrong and the person who has the view that rape isn't wrong, you saying between those two, And how that would be decided is by society, then, correct?
Well, yeah, the majority of society would, would ascribe to believe a certain thing. Like in America, I don't think in America anyone, I don't think, sorry, I don't think in America anybody took a vote that said, "Hey, raise your hand if you think rape's wrong." We just know, for the most part, most people just know rape is wrong, but not everybody. Most people, I'm gonna say 99% of people, believe rape is wrong, just like 99% of people believe that stealing is wrong. Or maybe not 99, but a huge majority of the population believes theft is wrong. I think it's wrong. Um, but there's always going to be those people that are the outsiders, the anecdotal evidence, the outliers that don't think that, and their opinion is going to be their own. But as a law, as a societal thing, they're wrong. As a societal norm and more as a societal norm, they're in the wrong because they are violating the norms of the society. But to go tell a child rapist that what he's doing is immoral, it's never going to click with him. It'll never click because he doesn't view it as immoral. He doesn't. It's not even on his radar. To tell Ted Bundy that raping people is wrong, not going to register because he's a fucking psychopath. He has different morals.
So, most of society are theistic. They hold theistic beliefs. They go to church and things like this. But clearly, the society in the majority don't force people to go to church. So let me ask you this: why does societal views, which dominate people who believe in going to church and hold theistic views, but they don't force people to go to church? Why should that not be forced? But the societal view that rape is wrong should be forced.
Because very simply, because not making people go to church would not lead to the downfall of society. We've seen our society is absolutely fine. We obviously have problems like every other developed nation, but forcing people to go to church would not help our society, nor would it hinder our society to force them to go or not force them to go. However, legalizing rape would be absolutely detrimental. Societal norms are put in place to have a society function as good as it can. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be rapists. There's always going to be murderers. There's always going to be, theists and atheists, and they're going to differ on their decisions. But laws are set in place that say, well, can this be done in society and no one will care? Like you go to church, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Nothing's going to affect me negatively by you going to church ever. Nothing's going to positively affect, it doesn't matter. It's not going to destroy the framework of our society, whether or not people go to church or not. But saying, yeah, it's okay to rape people, that would destroy the civilized version of our society because there would be no punishments for people doing heinous things and hurting one another. And that's the main framework of laws and social norms. Does it hurt people? If it does, you can't do it for the most part. There's exceptions, obviously. Like church. Does going to church hurt anybody? Probably not. Does not going to church hurt anybody? Probably not. Maybe, probably not. Does raping people hurt people? Yes. Does not raping people help people? Yeah. So society says, okay, we're going to get rid of rape. We're not going to force people to go to church. And separation of church and state, that would make no sense. So, yeah.
Where do you get this idea that things are detrimental to society if morality is subjective?
Well, my own morals, because I've talked with rape survivors and my own experiences in life and morals have led me to believe that rape is heinous and has led me to believe that rape does harm people. But I've talked to people who don't think rape hurts people. I've talked to people who don't think that rape is wrong. In this country, not in other countries, not in third world countries like Africa or the Middle East or Asia. I'm talking about in America, people that have no issue. We can talk about the Steubenville kids that were not far from me. I live in Ohio, so not far from me, a bunch of kids in Steubenville raped a girl while she was drunk and pissed on her, and they were having a hoot. They were filming it and they thought it was funny. Normal people would see that and think that they're fucking insane, and that's terrible. But that group of people thought it was funny and they thought it was okay. So obviously their experiences throughout their life, someone and somehow shaped their life into believing that that kind of behavior was okay, even though society viewed that as terrible, and I would agree with society on that case. I would say, yeah, because my morals ascribe to that. I mean, we could make the case all day if something's, well, that's another story. If something's legal or illegal, does that make it immoral or not moral? Because I feel like when you say, I feel like there's a big difference between saying, all right, this is illegal. You broke the law. You were speeding. You smoked weed. Whatever. There's a big difference between saying you broke the law and what you did was immoral. When you tell somebody what you did was immoral, it implies that what you did was evil. What you did had heinous things attached to it. What you did was against morality itself. Speeding is not against morality itself. Smoking weed is not against morality itself. Raping somebody, I would say most people would say that's immoral. So there's a big difference between illegal and moral, and I think people get those signals crossed a lot.
But you said this whole thing about rape would be a detriment to society. But it seems like that's just your opinion. If morality is subjective, who says what is detrimental and what isn't? Who decides that?
Just the majority of people. I mean, the government and the majority of people. I mean, if the majority of people say, we've seen it before, if the majority of people want something, it tends to get done. If the majority of people, I mean, let's think of an example. If the majority of people want gay marriage legalized, well, look at that. It happened. Okay. If majority of people want marijuana legalized, look at that. It's happening. It's going to happen by 2020. Marijuana is going to be completely legal for everyone to smoke recreationally. It's going to be awesome. So when people want something, and the government looks at it, and we all look at it, and we say, well, is this going to be detrimental to society? No. Yes. No. Okay. It's legal. Yes. No. It's illegal. It's just a combination of social norms and familiar morals that people share. Majority of people, if you want to argue for an objective morality, majority of people kind of have a morality, especially in America, but it differs from country and stuff like that, and region, of course. But the majority of people kind of have that morality together, even though America is completely split down the middle. But, like rape, most people would tell you that's wrong. But there's going to be some people that say it's not. And that means it's subjective. Because if somebody can tell you, well, I don't think rape's wrong, then you have to look at them and say, well, why do you think that? And their only answer is going to be, well, that's just not my moral code, man. That's not what I believe in. And you're going to say, well, my morals are different. Well, if our morals are different, that must mean there is some subjectivity to that. There's some leeway. There is some difference in people's morals. There must be, or everyone would toe the same line for the most part.
But here's the issue. You're saying that morality is subjective and you look to society as a standard, but why would society be a standard? If morality is subjective, why should society be a standard? Why?
Well, because the well-being of the majority in the society is more important than the well-being of the people that think these norms aren't good. Like, for example, let's take me for example, right? I hate traffic laws. I think they're the stupidest fucking thing on the planet. I hate traffic laws. I speed all the time. All right. I like to drive. I don't like all these stupid laws. But you know what? Sometimes I follow the laws because I know I'll get fucking arrested and I'll get punished. The threat of punishment sometimes deters people from doing what they want to do. Not only that, if everybody just drove around how they wanted to, we could never function as a society. I mean, could you imagine going down the road and having a bunch of people like me driving? We'd be running stoplights and going 65 in a school zone. Like, that just can't happen. It just could never. Society could never operate like that. So from a young age, most societal norms are enforced upon you, hoping to shape your morality to toe the line of society. We see it all the time. Kids are taught this. Kids are taught, respect the police. Kids are taught, say, yeah, yes, please, no, use your manners. This, that. Look both ways before crossing the street. Pay. Don't steal. Don't do this. Don't do that. They're taught from a young age. Do this. Do this. Do this. And for a lot of people, it's reinforced. And a lot of people, by the time they turn 18 to 20, they have a moral code that's been reinforced on them, or they've been able to make their own decisions. But some people are like, fuck it. I don't believe in that. I think it's stupid. How they came to those decisions is large in part to experiences they had, maybe. Like I talked about the young man that might be selling heroin. most people, I think you might agree, maybe not. Most people would say selling heroin on the street, probably not a good thing. I don't know, probably not a good thing. But kids that grow up selling it all the time, like it's a job, like it's selling candy, would probably tell you you're wrong. You know, who cares about that person? So yeah, I mean, it's all about keeping society functioning as long as we can. We already have societal problems. You know, our society is far from perfect. As you can see, people are killing people on Facebook Live. You know, we have a lot of problems, but we've been able to keep our society somewhat towed together by reinforcing laws and, of course, punishment, because that's what really scares people from breaking the law sometimes.
But this idea that we should keep society like functioning in a certain way, that just seems to be your my excuse me, that's just your opinion from what I can tell. Um, and that's very, very subjective. You're saying that morality is subjective, so the idea that we should keep society functioning in a certain way is also subjective, isn't that?
Yeah, it's subjective, but it's the subjective view of most people. And when you have a subjective view of most people, the majority tends to win out. And that's just how we've decided to organize society. We've just decided to, and I don't even know if people have a real opinion anymore on their own morals, because, like I said earlier, from age 2, you're reinforced. I would wonder what would happen to a kid if you just let him do his own fucking thing. I wonder what he would do. That's how you really test morality, but we'll never do that because it's unethical, quote unquote. But if you just took a kid and just let him, didn't show him TV and propaganda and, like I said, please and thank you and respect the police and don't speed and don't steal and don't, I wonder what that person would turn out to be. I wonder how he would make his own morals, because he would have to, because there's no norms pushing on him. Now, somebody that is for objective morality would say, well, humans have a moral compass, and he would find, or he or she would determine that, these things are wrong just by nature. But I don't know if that's true. A big part of me thinks that a big reason why these people have their own morals, quote unquote, is because they were shaped at a young age by society. And some of these people that have, quote unquote, immoralness, they just didn't have that propaganda fed into them their whole life. They just think for themselves. Now, obviously, some of them are fucked up. My personal opinion is that, killers and rapists are kind of fucked up. But yeah, I mean, it's just the societal view of the majority. But there's always going to be subjectivity in everything you do. I mean, you can't escape it. It's everywhere.
Here's the thing: if society thinks something should be done a certain way, where does some sort of objectivity come from? It's like you're saying, well, if this majority of society feels this way, some sort of moral, some sort of hidden moral truth is established, some sort of hidden moral foundation, or some sort of something out there is established as something more powerful that we ought to look to. But there's nothing that just magically becomes more objective to look to, or that we should prefer just because the majority agrees. It's just, you just have a majority of people that agree. So what if the majority of people agree? Where is this art coming from? Because the majority of people agree. Where is this art standard that exists with the majority of these people? Where is it?
Well, like I said, I think it's reinforced on them. I mean, I think that there was a time. I think it's just natural human connection too. I mean, humans are wired to connect. Humans are wired to feel empathy towards one another, even though that's not always going to happen. So, like slavery. A long time ago, slavery was considered the norm until we started to see, a development in our morality as it started to change. Our morality started to change. It started to go from, well, slavery's okay to, well, maybe slavery's not okay. And then there's still people today that probably think slavery's all right. I'm sure that, well, there's still slaves all over the place. So of course there is. So I think it just comes from a better understanding of what is better for society as a whole. And you might say like, well, that's subjective too. But you know what? There's a majority of people that think something, and there's a minority of people that think something. And even though I'm in the minority that thinks traffic laws are stupid, I don't think society is going to change anytime soon to let me drive however the fuck I want. So, and also that doesn't mean just because someone's morals are different. Like, let's say, morals can range from anywhere between something innocent like smoking weed, or smoking whatever, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, eating fast food. Someone might say, well, I think it's immoral to smoke weed. Well, whatever. I might not think it's immoral to smoke weed, and that's a small difference, right? But then there's like the rape thing we keep talking about, where like it's obviously very detrimental to society as a whole if people just thought rape was all right and did it willingly all the time. And I actually don't know that people wouldn't commit these crimes more often if there wasn't a fear of getting in trouble. That's what I mean by the reinforcement. I mean, we have a pretty high murder rate in America, I think. I think it would go up, obviously, if murder was legalized, but I think more people would just kill people. I just think more people would do that. I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't have the desire to kill people. I just think that people have their own morals, and when there's no punishment, when there's no deterrent, they can do whatever they want. So, I mean, I think it's more important just to shape the society as a whole. And you might ask, well, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Well, it just comes from years and years of, understanding and connecting, like minds, like, and media and coming up with social norms. There's a reason it's called social norms. We've established social norms like handshaking, like stuff like that. That's a social norm. So like not raping somebody is a social norm. You just don't do it. But there are people out there, unfortunately, that think it's fine. But their opinion really isn't taken that high into consideration because we just know, and I think you know this too, that if rape was legalized, that would cause a lot of fucking problems. But there's still going to be rapists no matter what because some people think it's okay.
Now, you told me that you don't think the government should have their hand in this whole abortion thing. But what if the majority of people said abortion should be illegal? Would you think that's okay?
Yeah, I actually do. I actually think that if the majority of people, but I know a huge majority of people think that pro-choice is okay. I think that most people think it's all right for access to birth control. I think that if like 90%, a huge percent of Americans all stood up, right? A huge percent. Everyone voted Republican. Everyone voted, a huge, huge percent of people said, you know what? We don't want this. This isn't what, we want in our society. That would be different. I think things would be different. I think if our country was founded, sorry, my phone just went off. I think if our country was founded on certain beliefs like that, then things would be different. But unfortunately, they're not. And moral subjectivity. And when you talk about the government controlling things, that's different too. Because you could say, what about this? Majority of people probably would say, we don't want to pay taxes. Because taxes are a pain in the ass, and people don't like to pay taxes because it's a pain in the ass. Because you got to pay taxes for every little fucking thing. It even bothers me. Majority of people would probably say, "Yeah, get rid of taxes," but I don't think that would really help society. So I think the big issue, and I'll reiterate it again to you, is something going to hinder society? Is something at society as a whole, not individual feelings and individual lives, but society as a whole. Is this going to negatively affect the whole society? Yes or no? If it's a yes, then, we have to think about what we're going to do. If it's a no, then, well, we go from there. But I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole all night because, people tell me all the time, well, cigarette smoking is very detrimental to society, but yet we've legalized it. Well, that's when money comes into play, and money has no morals. So when you get money into shit, then don't expect any morality because money has no feelings or morals.
So here's the thing, though, man. If you're telling me in one part, and this isn't to get into the abortion issue or anything, but you did say that we could talk about whether the unborn, has life at a certain point or isn't developed enough or whatever. But here's the thing: if the majority of people say abortion should be illegal, all those issues go out the window. and you would magically agree with the majority of society, and you wouldn't even consider any of those issues if society said otherwise to you. Is that what you're telling me?
If the majority of society said, like, if 75, 80%, 90%, some huge percent of the population of America said abortion is illegal, we want it illegalized, and they made it illegal, I would still, I would still not agree, because I would still have that moral subjectivity, and precedent has already been set because we've had it legalized for so long, so that would cause an issue. But I would, well, I mean, I would still have the moral subjectivity. I would still say, well, I think that it's right, I think it's fine, but I really wouldn't have much of a choice because we've established that it's wrong and we've made laws against it. I mean, that's the same. I mean, I hate to compare one apples to oranges, but that's the same thing. That's like me saying, well, the government says weed is illegal federally, but subjectively I say that it's fine. But it is illegal federally, so technically the government could come arrest you at any moment, at any state, on the federal level for doing that. So subjectivity would still be there, because we see it today. There are laws obviously in place, and people still don't agree with these laws. They're still subjective. I mean, the laws today, I mean, if you want to, I'm not going to talk about abortion again. It's just like this. If, to mention abortion, right now it's legal. All right. It's the law. Okay. And you're pro-life, which is fine. Your moral subjectivity is telling you, well, this is fucked up. We're killing babies. I don't fucking like this. And that's your subjective, opinion, and it's fine. We have me and you right here. Me and you are the perfect example of. That's why I didn't understand why nobody on that Facebook thread could understand moral subjectivity, because that was the perfect ecosystem right there of moral subjectivity. It was me with completely different morals than you and a lot of other people, all talking to one another. We have different morals. So right there, that's it. Like right there, we have different morals. And that just reinforces the moral subjectivity itself.
Now, as far as someone who would claim to be a pro-life atheist, because there are pro-life atheists out there,
Sure.
they would argue the abortion issue on different premises and foundations than I would. But as far as me being a Christian, I would say this: I don't argue moral subjectivity when it comes to things like abortion. Why is things like abortion wrong? Because the Christian God says so. And my view is, if you don't even have the Christian God, if you reject the Christian God, you cannot even begin to reason at all. So in other words, if you reject the Christian God, you can't begin to reason anything. You can't begin to argue anything at all. So here's what I would say to you. Do you accept the revelation of the Christian God? Yes or no?
So you're asking me if I'm a Christian. I mean, I would say I'm gonna say I'm not at this point, because I have I take issue with now I tend to believe that I hope there's a God. I always say this to people. I hope there's a God, because the last thing I want is to die and nothing to happen. That scares the shit out of me. To die and have eternal blackness. And I guess I wouldn't know because I'd be unconscious and I'd be dead. But that scares the fuck out of me. That at any moment, bam, my life is over, and that's it. There's nothing else beyond that. You never see my mom again. You never see never see anybody again. That's fucking scary. But I see. I don't want to get into a religious debate because that would be up all fucking night. But at this point in my life, I'm kind of agnostic. I kind of don't know that there isn't a God, and I don't know for sure that there is. And I'm still kind of looking for my niche. I'm 22, so I'm still kind of looking, for life experiences and looking for hopefully things. And I've had a few, but things that direct me towards that greater revelation of whatever you were just saying, the belief in a God. But to your point, at this point right now, I can't fully say with 100% confidence that I am what you just asked me.
Let me ask you something. For you to reason anything, would the laws of logic have to exist?
Sorry, I had my mic mute. So for me to have to reason uh, with
For you
logic.
to be able to reason anything, for you to be able to argue anything at all, would the laws of logic have to exist?
Well, I think, therefore I am. That's Rene Descartes. I think, I mean, the laws of logic. Well, what are the laws of logic to you? Because you just told me that you think, your own opinion is that if you don't believe in the Judeo-Christian God, the Jesus Christ, the Holy Trinity, I'm assuming, that you really can't reason at all whatsoever.
No, no, that's incorrect. That's not my opinion. I know that because he revealed it.
Well, you know that, but that's a hard burden to bear for you to have to prove that, because for you to say, well, I don't really think anyone can reason unless they're a Christian. I can go overseas.
That's not what I said. I didn't say um, you can't reason unless. Well, I guess you can say I said that in a sense, but yeah, you can definitely reason certain things. But what I'm getting at is that you can't account for why you reason. You can't even begin to find any sort of legit basis in which you do reason if you deny the Christian God.
Well, so you're saying you can't find a reason to reason. I get what you're saying. If you don't, have the Christian God in your life, well, I would have to ask you, um, well, where does this reason come from these people that are like atheists? These people that you said they're pro-life atheists. So there are people that
Hmm.
believe that the killing, or whatever you want to call it, of the unborn child is wrong, but they don't believe in God. So their logic must not be coming from a God, because they don't believe in any God. Like I said, I don't want to go down the path of religion too far, because I know that can lead to a long, long, long conversation. But and then there are people on the the eastern side of the world that they would tell you that if you don't believe in Buddha or Allah, you have no reason whatsoever. There's no way you can critically think. So it just kind of seems all subjective to me. It seems like you're born in America. This is a very Christian nation with Catholics too. But if you were born in Egypt or Yemen or Syria, God forbid, you might be singing a different tone right now. Maybe not, maybe not, but you might be. So I think that's highly subjective.
Okay, is it your? Let me ask you this: is it your view that all circular reasoning is wrong? Let me ask you this: is it your view that all circular reasoning is wrong?
I can't really, I don't really get your question. Do I understand that all what reasoning is wrong?
Do you know what circular reasoning is?
No, I'm not familiar with that word.
Like for example, if I say the Bible is true just because I say so, and I'll offer no evidence for that, but it's just true because I claim it to be, that would be circular reasoning.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that whatsoever. I mean, you can't say that, well, this is, I mean, I know that I say, well, my morals are subjective, so they're subjective. But I mean, for someone to, because there's so many different opinions, I mean, that would mean, I mean, that would even greatly reinforce the subjectivity, because that's you saying, well, the Bible's right because I say so. Okay, well, that's what you think. I get it. Whatever. The Quran is right because I say so. The Book of Mormon is right because I say so. The whatever. Whatever. All those different books are right. The Hadith is right because I say so. Um,
But how do you know that's what I think?
Well, you said,
Uh,
you told me. I mean, you told me. I'm assuming you're telling me the truth. If you're not, then I guess you're lying. I don't know. If you were to come up
no,
to me and say the Bible's right because I think it's right, I assume you're telling me the truth.
no. What I'm asking you is, how do you know that I merely think um, the Bible is true? How do you know that I just think that? How do you know that I don't actually know that to be the case? How do you reason that I simply think that is true?
I don't think I'm following your question, because if what you're asking me is, if you tell me that you believe the Bible is right because just because you
Uh,
believe it.
I'm telling you that I know the Bible is true, and then you may say, well, that's just your opinion.
Okay.
And then I'm asking you, how do you know that's just my opinion? How do you justify that claim that that's just my opinion?
Because my opinion is different. Because my opinion is different. I don't agree with you. So that means you have an opinion. So if two people disagree on something, then it becomes an opinion. Unless it's a fact and God is yet to be proven. And Christianity is yet to be proven as the absolute factual religion and a scientific base. And like I said, I don't want to go down that road because it's a long, long road. We all know that the conversation is way too long. That would be like, me telling you, listen, man, I'm telling you right now that I know pink Jolly Ranchers are the best fucking Jolly Ranchers. All right, I know they are. And you're going to be like, well, fucker, I think blue ones are better. How do you know that I don't know? Well, it's an opinion. Okay.
But that's a fallacy, though. Just because two people have different views does not mean that means one is an opinion as opposed to another, or one is not an actual fact. Like, for example, I can have two. My view is different from yours, but my view may actually be in reality correct. So just because you say that we have two different views does not mean that it's not an actual truth to be discovered, that my view is the correct one and yours is wrong.
Sure, that's absolutely possible. I mean, if I come up to you and I say, well, hey, dude, climate change is real, and you say, no, it's not. Well, one of those things is going to get proven, and one's not. So regardless of you, I'm not asking you if you believe in climate change at all. I'm just saying, I tend to believe in climate change. Or let's use something that is an actual fact. If I come up to you, if I come up to you and I say, hey, dude, gravity's real, and you say, well, I don't believe in gravity. Well, that's fine. You can have your wrong opinion because at that point, mine is a fact. We know gravity's real. At this point, I don't think that we know God is real. I don't think we know Christianity is the true religion. I don't think that everyone agrees on that. America might have a huge Christian population. That's absolutely true. But there's over 1 billion Muslims. So, I mean, there's almost more Muslims than there are Christians. I think there's still more Christians, but I think there's a lot of Muslims. So that would mean if you go up to a Muslim and say that, well, they would think you're wrong, and vice versa. So until something is proven objectively 100% as a fact, which is hard to do, and I don't believe there's any facts in right and wrong. There's only facts in facts, such as I'm 5'7". That's a fact. So if I come up to you and say, I'm 5'7", and you say, you're not 5'7", you're 6'2", you're going to be wrong every single time because it's a fact that I'm 5'7". But if I come up to you and I say, well, you know what, smoking weed ain't too bad for you, and you say, well, I think it's terrible for you. Well, we have not proven that it's really that good or really that bad. So there is subjectivity there. I think there's only real fact in facts. Like my laptop is gray, my eyes are blue. Those are things that are absolute facts. A lot of other things are just opinions, and they're just subjective.
Let me ask you this. How do you establish that facts exist in your worldview? For you to be able to detect facts and to establish facts exist, would you not have to assume that your basic level reasoning is reliable?
Well, I mean, so I'm just gonna answer the part I heard, which is like, how do you come up with what is an objective fact? Like I can understand your question. I get it because I mean, the only reason that I know my eyes are blue is because somebody told me one day that the color of my eyes were blue. Okay, if somebody would have told me the color of my eyes were orange, then I would think they're orange. So it goes on to that whole experience and being reinforced thing throughout your life, which can be false. Of course, it can be false. But the only reason we have blue and orange is because we made up those colors. Those colors aren't real. We made those colors up. We could have called blue. We could have called blue red, and everything that's blue would be red, right? We might not see it as red like we see today, but we just come up with these things, and then they are what they are. But we have our own way of determining, quote unquote, what a fact is. If we're talking about gravity, we just know that when you throw something up, it comes down. We call that gravity. It could be called mom's ham dinner. It could be called whatever. Whatever. We made up the word of what it's called. It's not really gravity. It's whatever we decided to call it. We could have called it, whatever, fucking spinach, and throw it up in the air, and that's called spinach. It goes down to the ground. That's gravity. But I mean, when there's so many different opinions about things, that's when facts become kind of construed. Such as, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you correct me. I mean, please do. I don't think many people disagree with gravity as a fact. I don't think that, but I could be wrong. But I don't think many people disagree with gravity, because we can go to outer space and know what no gravity is like. So we have examples of both. You know, we can do the scientific method. We can go up to space and say, oh, look at this. There's no gravity. Down here, there is gravity. That's the difference. Oh, one is it's a fact. We have gravity. But you know, to compare that to, like, let's say religion, there's just so many religions, and it's so subjective, because like when you have a good thing happen to you, I'm assuming, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to be disrespectful, you would probably thank Jesus or whatever, you know, the Judeo-Christian God. You would probably thank Jesus if something good happened to you because you're a Christian. That's fine. But someone in Saudi Arabia, if something good happened to them, they would thank Allah. But who's right? I mean, who's right in that regard? I mean, have you seen Jesus and have we seen Allah? And can we say, well, this isn't who's doing it? I mean, it's very hard at that point, for me at least. It's very hard with that subjectivity, because I just know that there are kids. You know, something. Maybe I can ask you this. I hate to cut. You know, go from answering your question to asking you a question, because I know that that's rude. But if the Judeo-Christian God is real, and that's the right religion, a lot of fucking people are going to hell. A lot of people, and a lot of people are raised from like an early age to believe in something. Like, you know, if you're born in Syria, okay, you believe in Allah, okay, because Christians get killed in Syria. All right, so it's kind of seems like kind of a fucked up situation. You know what I mean? It kind of seems like these people don't have a choice in what they believe in sometimes. So I just think it's highly subjective. I think facts, you know, are way different from those other things that I mentioned earlier. And I hate to talk so long. I'm sorry. I know you probably, you know.
Here's the thing. You bring up this thing about a lot of people are going to hell. Is that a problem for you?
Huh?
In my worldview, there are people who are going to reject Jesus Christ, and a lot of people are going to go to hell because of that. Is that a problem for you?
Well, no, that's not really a problem for me. If you say, you know, if you reject Jesus, you're going to go to hell. That really is not a big issue for me in particular. The thing that I wonder about oftentimes is, like I said before, these kids, and maybe I don't know, and I'm sure you know a plethora more about the Bible and knowledge that I don't know of. I'm sure you know plenty more about this stuff than I do. But when I hear that, what you just said, if people reject Jesus Christ, they're going to go to hell. Okay. I think about children in Syria. I think about kids in India, and, you know, even older people, you know, in Mongolia, Russia, and India, and South America, places that there might be missionaries, but there might not be. You know, so, you know, Northern Africa, you know, not Niger, places like that. These people are taught something their whole life, that this God is real and Jesus isn't. Just like you're taught that Jesus is real, or you found on your own volition, you know, that Jesus is real and that, you know, this God's not real. So I have a hard time grasping that those people, if there is a hell, deserve to go to hell, because from age 0, they were taught, no, Jesus isn't real. Allah is real. No, Jesus isn't real. Buddha is real. No, you know, whatever. Cthulhu is real. And they don't know it. They do not know any different, and they're indoctrinated, you know, into their religion. And then they die and they go to hell. It's like, well, where was the opportunity there to meet Jesus? You know, especially in a country where you're beheaded if you're a Christian, which I have sympathy for. I think that's wrong. So I think that, I mean, I don't have an issue with you saying that people that reject Jesus go to hell. I wonder how that's all sorted out, because I think that a lot of people will be going to hell.
Well, I think that from what I understand, well, now, no, I don't think this. Let me correct myself. I know that from what I come to understand, that God gives every person sufficient revelation to accept them or reject them. It's sufficient revelation He's given to them, then that's on their own peril, not His. So, when you bring children into the picture, the question will have to be, um, did these children have sufficient revelation or not? Um, if I don't know if children at a certain age can have sufficient revelation or not. I don't know how God deals with certain things like that, but I think you get to a certain point to where you are given sufficient revelation and you do understand, what's been revealed to you, and then if you reject that, then you go to hell. That's just the bottom line. So yeah, it may make people feel uncomfortable, but so what? That doesn't make it a moral problem or a moral issue. That just makes it something that they don't prefer to hear. That doesn't make it an actual problem. That just means that certain people will be uncomfortable with it. So, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a moral issue. I mean, it's an issue of your own, religion, and that's what you believe. And I guess, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not the most religious person, but I definitely wouldn't know. You know, I definitely wouldn't know if there's an age of understanding or not. I don't know those things. I mean, I don't. You said you might not even know yourself, and you're a Christian person, so you know more than I do. We don't even know. But the issue
The
that I
reason why I say I would not know that is because I'm not aware of the state of each person's heart as they live their lives. Only God can know that. That's why I can tell you that.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I get that. I agree 100% with you. Like, you don't know the state of a Syrian kid right now that just got blown up by the United States. You don't know the state of bumfuck George that lives in Kentucky right now. Yeah, you don't know. You can never know. You're never gonna know. Like what my point was, what I was kind of talking about was like sometimes I feel like some of those kids, like you said, you don't know the age of if revelation is revealed to them or not. I sure as hell don't know. But if you're like 4 years old and you get blown up in a drone strike, I'm not sure if maybe there was opportunity for a revelation, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. I can't make that call because I'm not God and I'm not really that religious. So I don't think I can make that call. I'm not sure you can make the call. I don't know if you can. Maybe you can. I don't know. Those are the issues. And also to get back to the subjectivity, um, there are probably people that think just like you in the Middle East, but they think you're wrong and they're right. They probably think right now there are people in America that have not realized their revelation to Allah or to Buddha or whoever, and they're going to go to hell because they haven't accepted Allah. And if they reject that, because the revelation you see as Jesus, they see as Allah. And they see you rejecting Allah and accepting Jesus, and to them, you're going to hell. But to you, they're going to hell. See what I mean by that? It seems like it's kind of like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I know that it's deeper than that, but that's just what I see from the outside looking in.
I want to get back to how do you establish reason exists in your worldview? Like when you talk about facts and things like this, wouldn't for facts to occur or to exist, wouldn't there have to be certain regularities in nature?
Well, there would have to be, yeah, like okay, like a fact is it rains, it gets wet. That's a fact. When it rains, it gets wet. If P, then Q. If it rains, the street's wet. That's something we learn in statistics. So that I would say that's a fact because it's observable in nature. If it rains, it's wet. If we've made up our own metrics of measurement, but if I grow, I'm 5'7". If I don't know, if I stab myself, I bleed. You know what I mean? That, like just what you said, there's events in nature that are observable. That's a big key word, observable. And repetitive too, that repeat themselves, that present themselves as fact. Like if I eat junk food, I get fat. A lot of people get fat when they eat junk food. I get unhealthy, I get heart disease. If you eat shit, you get heart disease. If you eat good, you have a healthy body composition. These are things we can look at. These are things that we can repeat. These are things that, for the most part, always come out the same way. And there are anecdotal evidence, but anecdotes are usually thrown to the side as outliers, because the majority is what's important, as we said before, or as I've said before, excuse me. So I think, to your point, if something's going to be a fact, it has to be one, observable in nature. It has to be able to be repeated, and the outcome has to be, for the most part, the same over and over again.
So you say observable, so that means you are appealing to your experience, then, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I get, yeah, sure, I guess, sure, you would, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to understand what you mean by that. Yeah, you would be appealing to your experience as you observe it. Um, then that would be what it is. But I guess you could always have subjectivity even in that. But whatever.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say you put your feet on the floor when you get out of bed every morning. Um, how does your experience verify that every time you get out of bed every morning and you do your regular routine or whatever, how does your experience verify um, that everything you do is going to be regular? Like you put your feet on the floor and you may go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, take a shower, whatever. How does your experience verify? How can I put this? Um, how does your experience verify what you observe? That everything you do is going to be consistent at all times. Like, how does your experience verify that? Because here's the thing: um, because you experience something over and over again, like putting your feet on the floor and doing everything else, just because you experience that over and over again does not mean that your experience will always be that way. Because how do you know that you won't put your feet on the floor the next day and fall through the floor? How do you know you won't put your feet on the floor the next day and you just disappear in the thin air? So, how does your experience verify reality? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer, I guess, because you kind of, I mean, I get what you were trying to say, but I mean, we're talking about your experience verifies what you feel. I mean, every time you get out of bed, your feet hit the ground, and you feel your feet hit the ground, and your body sends senses. You know you hit the ground. You go. You expect the water to turn on. You get in the shower, and you turn the knob left, and you expect it to be hot, and then you get out and you brush your teeth, and then you do this shit over and over and over again, and you've you've developed a norm for yourself. You've developed something that should happen every single time. Now it might not happen every single. You're right. I mean, there's a probability that on the 8,000th time you get out of bed, your ankle breaks. Because of sheer fucking dumb luck or fate or whatever you want to call that. But your experiences that are repetitive over and over again, you just assume because it's happened. You put your hand on a stove, it's fucking hot. You know what I mean? It's gonna that's not gonna change unless something happens dramatically, like your I don't know, your body completely changes or the heat shuts off or something. Every time that's gonna be the expected result. Just like you have sex, you feel it feels good, or if you have sex, it hurts. Then you probably will always assume it'll hurt, and that might be true. It might not be. I don't know where we're going with this question, but I do agree that not all the time will it always be the same, or there is a chance that it couldn't be the same. But basically, you interpret what's going to happen based off of previous results and what is said to keep happening. Like I said before, if you turn on the stove and put your hand on the stove, I'm willing to bet 9 times out of 10 it's going to hurt. Now, maybe the 10th time the power's not on, or something happens, or you've built a resistance to it. I don't know, but there's a good chance that probability is going to turn out, the same way, because it has over and over and over again. There's no reason to believe it wouldn't. So I don't know if I answered your question. It was kind of a difficult one. I'm sorry, but that's all I have to offer on that.
In other words, what I'm getting at is the views you get about reality, about why facts exist, about why you can put your feet on the floor and the same thing will happen all the time. The basis for why you think those is based on your assumptions.
Well, yeah, I mean, the basis that your feet will hit the ground every morning, it's a little bit based off of assumptions, but not completely, because you've had the same thing happen over and over again. So I would say when using the word assumption or speculation, when using the word assumption or speculation, there's a lack of knowledge there, because you're assuming, you're speculating, so you're missing a piece of knowledge. So if I get out of bed, if I get out of bed tomorrow morning, I am assuming that I'm gonna hit the ground with my feet. But it's not really an assumption, because it's happened over and over and over and over again. It's just it's pretty much a fact, that barring some crazy otherworldly event, the earth shifting or my dorm room collapsing, I'm gonna stand up, and my feet are gonna hit the ground. Even if I fall on my face, my feet are still gonna touch the ground. So I don't know if assumption is the right word, because assumption is kind of like a lack of knowledge. Like, I'm assuming I'm going to get an A on this exam. Well, I don't know that I'm going to get an A on the exam. I have no idea. But I do know that the exam is on a piece of paper. That's not really an assumption. I know it's on a piece of paper. That's a fact. I'm assuming I'm going to get an A, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's safe to say that it's an assumption that I get out of bed and I touch my feet to the floor. I think after so long, it's just kind of like a fact that you get out of bed and your feet touch the floor. But I don't think assumption is the right word, but to your point earlier, there is a chance that it won't happen. There's always a chance that something won't go the way that you think. Like, there's a chance right now that the power could go out and our fucking stream gets all fucked up. I don't think it's going to happen, but I couldn't know that.
What I'm getting at is, if you put your feet on the floor and expect, things to work like they always do, then what you have to do is assume that the world works in a regular law-like way, because you break your ankle when you get out of bed doesn't mean the world doesn't work in a law-like way. But if you've gotten out of bed 8 million times, and on the 8 millionth and first time you just disappear in the thin air when you get out of the bed, then we have a different question we're dealing with here. So in other words, for you to experience reality in a certain way, reality would have to work in a certain law-like way. In other words, you would have to assume that the next day it will happen the same way. But for you to live practically, you have to assume the universe works in a law like a regular way. Would you not?
Yeah, I mean, the universe. Like we talked before about gravity and other things, the universe does work in a law-like way. I don't know who wrote the laws. That's a discussion we could have later on or another time. But
you say things do work. How do you know things work?
Well, it's observable. I mean, I hope we're on the same page. Maybe we are. When I hear,
I just told you that your observations can't verify that, because you don't know that when you hit your feet on the floor the next day that you won't disappear in the thin air. You assume that.
well, I mean that's a highly improbable thing to assume. I mean, if you lived your life like that, we would have no way of getting around or doing anything, because you would assume that. I mean, if you go to bed, you assume you're going to wake up, right? Because you wake up, but you might die in your sleep. Maybe you have a heart attack. Maybe you have cardiac or whatever. You have anaphylactic shock while you sleep and you die. But the world is observable in many ways, because we see, like, for example, we know that trees grow from the ground. You plant something, it grows. It dies in the fall. The leaves fall down, and then the winter comes, and when the plants die, the bears go into hibernation and shit, and summer comes and spring comes and everything comes back to life. And this happens over and over and over and over. And then then we realize that, well, via science, there's a reason why, because of the cold. That's the reason why the plants end up doing this, and that's the reason why the bears end up doing this, and because the warmth that causes a different reaction, that ends up doing this, and that ends up doing this. But I mean, if we're just gonna, there's always, if you want me to tell you that you're right, then I will, because there's always going to be that slight percentage that something crazy is going to happen. Tomorrow, we don't, like I said, I don't know. I'm assuming tomorrow is going to be a normal day. But tomorrow, a meteor could hit Earth, or Iran could nuke us. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm going to assume that, because I have a lack of knowledge about tomorrow. I don't even know if tomorrow's not promised. So I don't even know if I'll make it tonight. You know what I mean? But I'm just going to go ahead and assume, because I have a lack of knowledge, that I'm going to wake up and everything's going to be okay. But I think when you use the word assume, it's a lack. You have to insinuate that you do have a lack of knowledge and that it's predicting a future event occurring the same way. Whereas if you say something's like a fact, it's more like, well, I know this pillow's here. It ain't going nowhere right now. I know it's right here. That's a fact. I got this pillow right in my hand. Like, I know this pillow's in my hand. Now, will it be here in 50 years? Probably not, but it might be. That's the whole probability thing. I mean, it's highly unlikely, but could be.
How do you determine things happen in a regular law-like way as opposed to just by sheer randomness? Like for example, I can put a coin on the table and I can physically put it on the table 50 times in a row. I could put tails on the table. I do that by my conscious action, as opposed to if I just flip the coin 50 times and it lands on tails 50 times in a row. Now, how do you verify that what you experience isn't just a product of chance as opposed to regular occurrences in nature? Do you have any way to verify that you putting your feet on the floor every morning isn't just a product of chance rather than regular nature? Because I could flip a coin 50 times in a row and it could get tails 50 times in a row. That possibility can happen, as opposed to be putting the coin on the table 50 times in a row and putting tails. So how can you verify that what you experience is regular nature as opposed to outright chance? How do you verify that?
Well, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I think it goes back to that observable thing. I mean, you say you flip a coin 50 times, and it possibly could land on tails 50 times. I mean, that's a possibility. You're right. It's highly unlikely, but there's a big. I mean, there's a big difference between flipping a coin 50 times and having it land on tails 50 times, and then you taking the coin and setting it on the table 50 times and meaning to put it as tails. Because one, you're taking yourself out of the equation completely. You're just leaving it up to chance. And the other, you have a planned outcome. You already know what's going to happen. Right? If you take a coin and you place it on the table, it's going to be tails every time because you're placing it on tails. You're placing, if I take my fist and I slap myself in the face, I'm going to feel something every time. I'm going to feel something every single time.
But the problem is, how do you know nature works? In some active regular occurrence, because right now, you don't even accept the revelation of the Christian God. So how do you know what you experience isn't just chance as opposed to regular occurrences in nature? How do you distinguish between those two in your worldview? If there is no order, if there is no conscious ordering agent behind it, how do you know what you experience isn't just a product of chance as opposed to regular nature? How do you distinguish those?
Well, it could be a product of it could be a product of chance, but when we distinguish something as a product of nature, I mean, like I said, I hate to beat the dead horse, but we see it over and over again. And there's always going to be, like you said, there's always going to be that probability that it doesn't happen. But I think it's a little disingenuous to say that, well, we've had these seasons on the earth, every single year for whatever, 400 years. Let's just say 400 years. I think it's kind of wacky to think like, well, tomorrow or this year we ain't going to get winter. No winter this year. I mean, there's a chance, I guess, but we've looked at these patterns. We know why it happens because of the seasons and the Earth's rotation. We know why these things happen, kind of like photosynthesis. We know why plants grow with the sun and how they use the energy. We know how that happens because it happens when we put a plant, give it water and put it by the sun, it grows. When we take the plant and we throw it underneath a table in a dark room and don't give it any water, it dies, and it dies every single time. There's never a time where a plant, like a plant that needs sun and water, if you throw it into a closet, it's going to flourish into this big, beautiful plant. It's not going to happen because it needs sunlight and it needs water. So we know that. But I'm curious, what is it about you accepting the revelation of Jesus Christ that gives you the arbitration of how the world works.
Well, it wouldn't be arbitrary. It would be because he revealed it to me, and because of the Christian God, he orders things to work in a regular way. I can appeal to his revelation to have that security that things work in a regular way and that things aren't just simply happening by way of chance. If you reject the Christian God, you don't have any such way to whether what you experience is just randomness. It happens to benefit you over and over again as opposed to regular laws of nature. You don't know. You could be experiencing a world to which you just flipping a coin and it just happens to be tails every time, as opposed to something or someone putting it there. You can't verify that either way in your worldview. You can't appeal to anything. You just assume it to be true.
Yeah, but isn't it the same case of like what you're doing though? Because you're saying there has to be a first mover and there has to be a first pusher. So I mean, to your point, like you think the Judeo-Christian God is Jesus, whatever. You are assuming, or that he's the one that orders the world to do certain things. So there is an order, and you know that because he's revealed that to you via his revelation. So you know the world works in a certain way because the God that you describe to believe in controls it to work in that way. But where's the evidence of that? I mean, isn't that you just saying what I'm saying but putting a different name on it? I'm saying that nature does it. You're saying that God does it. But at the end of the day, it does it the same way. At the end of the day, the same things happen. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, it rains and the ground gets wet. At the end of the day, winter comes and fall comes and earthquakes happen. And you say God does it. I say nature does it. But at the end of the day, it still happens. So
the problem with that is for you to ask me for evidence, you will have to assume the world works in a regular way for evidence to even be ascertained. But you can't even verify that the world works in a regular way. So you have to assume that what you experience in your life is regular occurrences of nature, and that tomorrow will be like it has been in the past many times. But you don't know whether that's happening by chance or by regular laws of nature. So when you ask me about evidence, you have no way to even verify evidence can even occur in your worldview.
Yeah, but if you're going to ascribe that the God did it, the burden of proof is now on you to prove to me that God's real. I don't have to prove God's not real. You have to prove to me God's real. If you tell me God does it because I know he does it because he's just revealed it to me in his revelation, now the burden of proof is on you to show me that God is real and this is how it works and this is why it works. Because to me, what I hear, and I'm not talking down on your religion, so don't take it as an offensive thing. What I hear is we both view the same things. And you just say, well, God did it because he showed me. But there's no evidence of that at all for me to see. There's no evidence at all provided that shows me that God showed you anything. I mean, you could tell me, listen, man, I can grow wings. And I'll be like, well, show me. Well, I can only grow wings when no one's around. Well, I can't prove you can't grow wings because you only grow wings when no one's around. So how do I prove it? It can't be proven false. And that's where the God thing happens. You can't prove God is not real. But at the same time, when asked to provide evidence, I never see any real evidence. And like what you said, you believe that God is the one that orchestrates the world to do these things. I might just think it's nature. And nature has programmed itself to do those things. And that it's not ever going to change. And you might think it's not ever going to change because God did it. And I say, I'm not saying I say this, but I could say nature did it. And neither of us can prove 100% our point. Like, I can't prove to you 100% that the world works a certain way because of nature. I can't. And you can't prove to me that God did it. You really can't. There's really no proof on either way. So we're kind of stuck at this stalemate where one of us is going to have faith in something. And that's
the mistake you're making, though, is that proof is the same as persuasion, and it's not. I can provide you proof and or evidence all day, but that doesn't mean you'll be persuaded by it. So to say I have to prove something to you, the thing is, I can prove something to you or to anybody. That don't mean that you or anybody would accept it. So proof is different than persuasion. And then again, for you to ask me for evidence would be for you to assume that there is some sort of regularity in your worldview in which evidence can occur. Establish that to me because you told me, because you admitted that you couldn't even verify that when you put your feet on the floor tomorrow, that you won't just disappear in the thin air. You assume that you won based on your consistent past occurrences. So for you to ask me for evidence, how could you even ask me for evidence if you can't even show how it can occur in your worldview?
Well, because you're the one saying that God's real. So if you're going to say that God's real, you have to prove to me that God's real. If your thing, and proof is subjective, just like morals. I can prove to you all day that marijuana is not dangerous. That doesn't mean you're going to believe it. I can prove to you all day that big dicks don't matter. That doesn't mean you're going to believe it. Just like you said, you can prove to me, but what is your proof? Your revelation, your mysterious revelation that I get no example of. I never saw God come down and shake your hand. And you never saw me run 4 miles. So you might, so maybe I can't run 4 miles. So you never saw it. It's based off of observing things. So I think it's a little weird for you to just assume that your way is right because, well, God shows you in Revelation. Well, there's no evidence for that to me. How do I know you're not just lying? I mean, you could easily just be lying. I don't know that you really saw Revelation, and what you see as Revelation, people in other countries see as a revelation from Allah, and maybe you have the same revelation. I don't know.
But here's the thing: if morality,
if you're gonna say like God's real, I know because 100% fact, God's real. The world works like this because God showed me in a revelation. If you're gonna say that statement, you have got to have, because you have burden of proof at that point because you're making a statement. So you have to somehow prove it, and your evidence of proof might be very subjective. Like you said, you can offer me proof all you want, but can you offer me evidence? Can you offer me a physical evidence, something that I can observe? Like I can see a tree grow for 100 years. I can see a million plants grow for years and years and years and years and years. I can see seasons for years and years and years, but I've never seen a God, and that's an issue.
Hold on. Let me ask you this. So are you telling me that let me ask you something. If you want to know whether the Christian God exists, are you saying that there is an expectation, a necessary expectation of what you would see? Like, for example, if I'm saying that a crime occurred at a crime scene, we're looking at a crime scene and we're evaluating evidence on how something occurred. For me to say that this occurred at the crime scene, I would have to have an idea on what the evidence would look like to say that this occurred at the crime scene. Look at blood spatter. We would look at evidence of a struggle. We would look at evaluate witnesses and things like this. For me to say that this happened or this person did this, I would have to have an idea of what evidence would look like. If you're going to tell me that you haven't seen this evidence for God, then you have to have a necessary criteria on what the expectation of the evidence would be. So if you are going to say that the evidence hasn't been presented to you, then what did you expect to see that has not been presented to you to say that it hasn't been there?
Well, I think the example you used, I mean, I don't think it was the best example because if you say like a crime scene, we need evidence to prove this happened at a crime scene. Like you said, we need, sorry, some kid's driving a fucking car around my campus. Like you need, blood splatters, evidence of a struggle. We need, was this guy shot 10 times? There was a gun used, right? Like, was there a gun used at this crime scene? If there was a gun used on this person, he'll have bullet wounds in him. If he was killed by a gun, he'll have bullet wounds. That's a fact. You don't get killed by a gun. If he was shot, he'll have bullet wounds. And that's observable.
Let me put it like this. There's no, if I say there's no evidence anybody was shot at a crime scene, I'll have to know what the evidence would look like if somebody got shot to say that nobody got shot. So if you're going to say that no evidence of God has been presented, you have to have an idea of what the evidence of God would look like.
Yeah, it's never been presented. That's the problem. That's the point right there. That if you are going to say someone's been shot, but you've never seen evidence of someone being shot, you would need the evidence first presented to you. And if you're going to say that God's real, I need the evidence. There's never been any evidence.
We know. Well, we know what.
We know what gunshots look like, though. We know what gunshots look like. So
yes,
yeah, but we don't know what God looks like because He never came around. That's my point.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't know what the evidence of God looks like, then how can you say it's not there? How do you know that it hasn't been already presented to you, but you just didn't recognize it? You can't say that it's not there if you don't know what it looks like at all. It could have been presented to you and you just simply didn't recognize it. So how can you just say it dogmatically that it isn't there or it hasn't been presented?
Well, that's an issue because you say, how do you know the evidence? I get what you're saying. It's a good point, and I commend you for that. It's a good point because if there's never been evidence of God, and I'm saying, well, I've never seen evidence of God. Jesus has never came. Jesus has never came down and shook my hand or whatever. Obviously that's kind of out there. But how do I know that the evidence hasn't already been provided? How do I know that that butterfly that landed by me, that was the sign? How do I know that that prayer I said last night, it was answered by this, or that was the sign, and I just overlooked it because I didn't know, right? I was expecting something more. I was expecting like a real physical thing, and that's not how the evidence of God was presented. It was presented by, like I said before, the butterfly or the wind or the tree falling and just missing me and just saving my life.
Let me stop you right there. So in other words,
that the evidence you saw isn't just you just saw that evidence and you just construe that as evidence because you want God.
So in other words, the evidence you are looking for isn't necessary, it's preferential. So you prefer to see this, but you haven't seen this, and then you say it's not evidence or it hasn't been presented. So you're looking for something that you would prefer to see rather than what's necessary then, correct?
Well, what's necessary? What is necessary to believe in God? What's the evidence? What's the necessary evidence?
Like for example,
what is it?
If I say that there was nobody shot at this crime scene,
sure,
I would necessarily know what the evidence would look like if somebody gets shot to say that nobody was shot. I would have a necessary criteria on what that would be like. So, in other words, it seems like you're looking for a preference rather than what's necessary. You're saying, well, I would expect to have seen this, or I would have liked to have seen this, but I haven't seen it yet. So it seems like you're looking more at preferences rather than what's necessary.
Yeah, but you're using the word necessary, and I'm not really getting an example of what actually necessary is, because how do I know that every little hippy-dippy thing you see, you just don't believe is God? Like, how do I know that you saw that tree land right next to you and it didn't kill you, and that was like, wow, that was God, that was a sign? How do I know that you just don't think that these little meaningless things that mean nothing, and you've just construed them to believe that they are signs of God, when really they're nothing? They're just acts of nature. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying if there's no necessary evidence, there's no standard for the evidence, how do I know that you're just not walking through life thinking that every little meaningless little flutter by your face, little bird that flies by you, or a little wind, or a little voice you might hear, or whatever, shiver down your spine? How do I know that you just don't think that that's God, just out of some feeling? There's no necessary evidence. You said it.
But you can't say that there's nothing. So wouldn't the best thing for you to say is that you just don't know, instead of saying dogmatically there is no evidence, or you haven't been presented it? Wouldn't the honest thing be to say that you just don't know?
Well, I do say that I'm agnostic. I said that earlier in the interview. I said that I don't know that there's not a God, but I don't know that there is. But I have not been provided the evidence necessary to say that, to make that decision to move from agnostic to Christian. You understand what I'm saying? Right now, I don't know that there isn't one. There could be one. I hope there's one, because I don't want to just die. I'd said this before. I don't want to just die and live in blackness, or just die. That's scary. But
how could you say that you do know that you haven't been provided if you don't know what it looks like? How could you say you do know that?
Well, if I don't know what it looks like, how do I know I was provided it? You could just be
exactly. You can't know either way, can you?
But you could construe anything as a symbol of God and fool yourself. I could say that, like I said, oh, I prayed and this thing happened. Well, that was the sign. But maybe it wasn't the sign. Maybe it wasn't the sign at all. That's all your own mind thinking that. That's all. you thought that was the sign, and you were like, okay, that was the sign, that was it. But there's no real objective evidence to. I mean, honestly, until
Wouldn't the honest thing be to say you don't think you've been provided? Couldn't you say that? That would be an honest answer.
I mean, yeah, I don't think, yeah, well, that's what I said. I don't think I've been provided. Until now, I haven't been. I mean, but to say that would mean that maybe that butterfly was God. But how would I ever know that? That's insanity to think that someone would know. If you were like my Christian witness and you were the person that was going to convert me to Christianity, and you told me that some random little event in your life, like some random sign happened to you, and you were like, man, I would have never thought that this was the sign, but it was. Man, when I saw this bird fly by me, I knew. I'd be like, that doesn't mean shit, dude. That's just a bird. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? That's not enough for me. I'm sorry if that really irks your. That's just not enough for me. You know what I mean? Like I'll tell you a story real quick. I mean, let me tell you a story real quick, and then I'll let you continue. When my mom was dying of cancer in 2015, I remember getting kind of religious for a minute. I remember saying like, man, if I can just don't kill my mom. You know, I remember praying. I remember saying just don't take my mom. And then I remember compromising because I remember knowing she's gonna die. Listen. God's not answering this prayer. She's dying. Her hair's falling out. She's going to fucking die. So then I compromised on my prayer. And I said, you know what, God, if you just let me see my mom before she dies, I'll be happy. So I already compromised on the prayer because he didn't answer the first one. And I was like, okay. So we get a call at 6 a.m. and we drive to the fucking hospital. And I got to the hospital right before she died. I ran through the ICU and I got there right before she died. Literally about a minute before the heart rate thing went. Boo. So I did. So the prayer was answered. But how do I fucking know that was the sign when he didn't answer the first damn prayer in the first place and just saved my mom? But he let me see her for 30 fucking seconds before she croaked? That ain't enough for me, man. I'm sorry. That ain't enough.
Isn't it possible that he had a different purpose for your mom passing away that you're unaware of, and that maybe he did answer you, but maybe he didn't answer favorably to you? Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible. Like I said, I don't know that it's not. I'm just saying that example right there wasn't enough for me. But maybe you're right. I just don't know. There's no way to know. I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic. I don't know that it's not true, and I haven't seen enough to know that it is.
All right, then let's take the next step. Then this means you're looking for preferences rather than what's necessary. This is what this means. And since we understand this now, we can take the next step. When you say that you haven't been provided sufficient revelation, the Bible makes it very clear that he has written the word on all of our hearts, and that every person is made in the image of God, and everyone knows that he exists. And in Romans, I think it's 1:18, it says that they suppress the truth and unrighteousness. And he has revealed himself to us in 3 ways. There's natural revelation. That is, you look in nature, you look around you, you look at the trees, the sun, you look at just life in general around you in nature. That's one form of revelation. There's innate revelation, which is to say that we have the inner witness of the Holy Spirit revealing to us certain things. And then there is special revelation. You look at scripture, for example, we have the Bible, we have God's word. So it makes it very clear in scripture that God has revealed himself sufficiently in these 3 forms of revelation, and those who reject them suppress the truth and unrighteousness. So when you say that you haven't been presented, enough evidence, or it hasn't been sufficient or good enough for you or whatever, God says, well, that's not his problem. He's made it very clear that he's provided sufficient evidence for you to accept that he exists. But you just rejected truth and unrighteousness. Proof is different than persuasion.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but then again, you're taking all your examples from the Bible, which also hasn't been proven to be true by a lot of metrics. So your faith is based on the Bible, but what if the Bible isn't true? Because there's a million religious books out there. So that makes sense if you're a Christian. I understand, because you said there's 3 different ways and this and that, and it's very understandable. I get what you were saying. But But if you don't believe in the Bible, that means shit to me, right? That means nothing to me. If I tell you, well, this is the way to do this because this book says so, and you say, well, that book's bullshit. Well, then that book means nothing to you, and then hence the words in the book mean nothing to you. You know what I'm saying?
If you reject the Christian God, though, how do you prove anything?
Well, you don't need the Christian God to prove a lot of things. I mean, we can prove many.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
How do you know you need God? We can do this all night. How do you know you need God? Without the Bible, what if you were born and just never became Christian? Would you know things like how to have sex, how to reproduce? Would you know how to train your body? Would you know how to drive? Would you know how plants work? Of course you would, because we have science books. You would still know those things even without if you grew up and never became a Christian and never heard about Jesus, you would still know a lot of objective facts. You just wouldn't have your faith.
The Bible reveals to us that all the treasures of wisdom, knowledge, and things like this are hidden in Christ. So that means basically that for anything to work, whether it's some proof, evidence, science, reason, anything like that, Christ is the necessary forefront for all those things. If you reject that necessary forefront, then proof cannot even occur in your worldview. See, you operate from this worldview in which you think you can autonomously acquire proof without the Christian God. But I already challenged you on how you even would detect the world works in a regular way as opposed to chance. You can even put that together. You can even prove that in your own worldview.
Yeah, but
Would you be able to ascertain proof in your worldview by rejecting the Christian God? You couldn't even ascertain that nature works in a regular way as opposed to outright chance.
Yeah, but you're assuming everything in the Bible is true. You're assuming that because of your own subjectivity. You're assuming that because what you believe is true, that you can't have facts and you can't discover things without the Judeo-Christian God. But you know what? There are a lot of. What about these other religions like Islam and Judaism and Buddhism? They've discovered plenty without the Christian God. They didn't need the Christian God. They discovered plenty without the Christian God. They're not even allowed to worship or learn about the Christian God, and they still know all these things. And
you are assuming that I assume.
Well,
you
but
are assuming that I assume.
Yeah, but you're assuming the Bible's real. You're assuming it works because that's what you believe in.
No, I'm not. I don't operate from the same worldview you do. I just told you that it's been revealed.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I don't know if that's true. I mean, you could say that all day. You know what? It was revealed to me that last night I was going to win the lottery. Last night it was revealed to me that I'm going to be a millionaire when I'm older. You don't know that that's true. So those words, they fall on deaf ears, man. They really do.
Well, the Bible tells you that you do know and that you suppress that in unrighteousness.
But that comes from the Bible, which I don't know is real. So this circle's going to keep going around and around, man, because you believe in the Bible. I really don't. I mean, so, you know what I mean? You're providing facts from a book that I don't think is factual. So that's like me reading you answers out of a math book and you don't believe in math. You never, I mean, whatever.
Well, let's try this. In your own worldview, you can't even account that facts can even occur. You can't even account for the laws of nature.
Well, I said I could, yeah.
Well, how do you do that? If you've already rejected the revelation of the Christian God, then how can you establish in your worldview that all those things can occur?
Well, I don't need the revelation of the Christian God to know how things work because it's observable. I just see how it works, and I know that nature works that way without needing a God. It doesn't need a God to work that way. It just works via nature, via natural selection. That's how people became the way they are. That's how animals became the way they are. I mean, it's just I don't need that fallback. I don't need that. You don't know how the world works because you don't believe in the gods. Or how do you even say that?
How do you know that? I already told
you know that.
I already told you
that means nothing to me.
I already told you that you can't operate off your observations because you don't know that those observations are detecting chance or regular occurrences in nature. You can't distinguish between the two in your worldview. You already admitted that. So how can you say that your observations can verify it?
We can verify repetitive nature. I said there was a small chance of things not going right, but I mean, you probably, now that you've read the Bible, you probably don't know the answers to every single thing that's going to happen. I mean, you probably don't know 100%. Like if we're, for example, going to go to war with Syria and Iran and Russia. So, I mean, I wouldn't say you know that for a fact. If that happened, you'd probably be like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's how things were supposed to work out because that's, I mean, that's what, I just believe because of, the Bible and God and the revelation, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you saying that, we believe in the same things in terms of how the world works, naturally, but the only difference is I say naturally, you say by God, they both sound ridiculous. And one has really no evidence. And that's what blows my mind.
But you can't even establish any of these things when you reject the Christian God. I can establish why evidence exists in my worldview. I can establish why the world works in a regular law-like way. I can establish all these sorts of things. You got observations that you can't even verify. You don't know if the world is working by chance or by regular occurrences in your worldview. You can't establish that. I can.
No, you really can't. You're just saying that because you're religious and that's what you believe in, and you're saying that that is the way things work, but that's not a provable fact. You're saying that you decided that you believe in God doing these things. I believe that nature does these things. There's no way to prove either one 100%. So we're both kind of just circling around one another. And
No,
because you have such strong faith, you tend to believe that
I don't operate in the same worldview you do, sir. So how can you tell me? So how can you tell me that?
How can you tell me that I'm wrong? I'm not religious, so your words fall on deaf ears.
How can I tell you that you're wrong? Because God said so. That's why.
That means nothing to me because I don't even know if God said that to you. That makes no sense whatsoever. That makes no sense, man. It really doesn't. It doesn't. I'm wrong because God said I was wrong. That's insane.
It doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what it doesn't make sense to you because the bottom line is like I said, you told me about the situation with your mom, and you didn't get an answer that satisfied you, or you don't think he answered you at all. But he may have very well answered you, and that was just it was just the answer that wasn't satisfying for you. So here's the deal. If you're going to say that he didn't answer you, how are you going to know that? How are you going to know that he did not answer you at all just because it wasn't preferential to you?
Okay, yeah, but what you're saying is, okay, I get what you're saying because you're saying like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't preferential to me. I didn't get what I want. So thus I say there's no God. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. I understand. But what I'm thinking, what you're saying is because I did get something, that just means it's real. And that's not right. I mean, just because I got something, that doesn't mean God did it. That could have just been by chance that I made it there 30 seconds, woohoo, 30 seconds before my mom died. Or the fact that I kept compromising on my prayer. I kept lowering what I wanted. At first, I was like, don't let my mom get cancer. Oh, she got cancer. Don't let my mom die. Oh, she's going to die. Okay, well, just let me get there. Well, you could do that with everything. You could say, okay, let me get into college. Okay, I didn't get into college. Well, let me get a job. Okay, well, I didn't get a job. Well, let me get on welfare. Okay, I got on welfare. And you can construe anything as a blessing if you want to. But I mean, that doesn't mean that it is. You're telling me I didn't get what I wanted. So how do I know that what I received wasn't from God? Like, how do I know what I received wasn't from God, even though it wasn't what I wanted? And I'm telling you, how do you know that you know? And you're going to say, because God said so. And that's just not right. There's no way to prove that.
Well, here's the thing. What you'd be doing is you'd be asking me you'd be asking me something very incoherent because God is the ultimate revealer. He is the ultimate source of all things. There's nothing that goes beyond him. So when you ask me to use my autonomous reason to verify things outside of him, you ask an illogical thing. Because if he's the ultimate source and there's something outside of him to verify him, then he would not logically be the ultimate. He's the stopping point. So if you ask me to verify something beyond his revelation, you're asking me something illogical.
Yeah, but at the same time, you just mentioning that God's real sounds illogical. So this is what I mean. This carousel of going around and around and around of me saying this is this thing and you saying, well, no, because of God. I mean, listen, honestly, we could go all night long and
if it sounds illogical, how do you occur that reason can work in your worldview to find out that anything is illogical? How can you do it?
Well, I think, therefore, I am. I never needed like a God to guide me to learn things I learned. I mean, that just sounds ludicrous. I mean, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that ultimate answer in my life like right now. I don't need to like look outside and then wonder how these things work, and then for some reason think that there has to be something doing it. I don't require that in my life. I mean, we have different worldviews, like you said. You don't ascribe to the worldview I ascribe to, so how can I criticize, you know, what you are saying to me? But at the same time, I don't have the same worldview you have. So, you know, you're talking on a point of religiosity down to me, and it's like we just don't think the same in terms of religion. So all day long we could do this dance where I say one thing and you say God, I say one thing, you say God, and that can go on forever, man.
For you to tell me that I'm doing anything illogical, you would have to assume the laws of logic, would you not?
Yeah, I assume that something has to be seen and proven to be real, and God is yet to. The evidence is not there for me. Like you said, it may have came in the form of a butterfly or something, but that's not the evidence I'm looking for. I'm looking for evidence like the plant growing, and I know it grew. And I mean, like I said, we could do this all night. You could have said that plant growing was the sign, but how in the hell am I supposed to know that? You know, it's just ongoing. That's why I didn't want to get into the religion conversation, because it's just going to be a constant circle of, you are religious, so you believe like this, and I'm not as religious, so I believe like this, and it's going to be a constant pull between. We have some similarities, but this grand thing, this big thing called God, is where we disagree. And it's like, no matter what I say, your answer is going to be because God, pretty much, and my answer is going to be, well, what God? And then your answer is going to be because God, and I'm going to be like, what God? And you're going to be like, because God. You know what I mean? It's going to be that forever.
It's not merely that. It's the fact that what you are doing is you aren't even consistent in your own worldview. Like, for example, you require evidence for you require evidence to believe in God, but you can't even verify that things work in a law-like way as opposed to chance. You simply believe that without evidence. So you are not consistent in your own criterion in what you require from others, like me, for example.
Well, it's really easy for you, because all you got to do is say God did it. That's very simple for you to prove to me, because all you got to say is God did it, God did it, God did it, God did it. Like,
and that's a problem. Why?
It's a problem because there's no evidence of that happening. That's such a cop out. That's such a cop out. That's just being like, well, how do you know the world works like this? Because God. Okay, that doesn't mean shit to me. Explain more. No, because God. Then you ask me, well, Jake, how do you know that the world does this and does this? And I got to explain to you all these scientific things and all these metrics and all this science and all this math and all this biology, and all you got to say is because God. So
I'm not merely the problem. The mistake that you're making, though, is that I'm not merely saying that God did it. I'm not merely saying that. What I'm saying is, given the fact that you cannot account for things if you reject the Christian God. Since you can't account for things if you reject the Christian God, it's sort of a transcendental argument for the existence of God. Like, if there are only two possibilities to account for something, either God or no God.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a disjunctive syllogism before?
I don't really understand what the word. No, what?
A disjunctive syllogism means if you only have two possibilities to account for something, if you disprove one, the other is necessarily validated, because only two possibilities can explain X. If you disprove one of the possibilities, then the other is necessarily validated. And it's just like for example, I think Sherlock Holmes said something to the degree of, if you exclude all possibilities of how something happened, whatever remains, no matter how absurd it sounds, must be the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So in other words, if there's only two possibilities to account for something, God or no God, if one of those things are excluded, then the other one is necessarily validated. So what I'm telling you is, I'm not just merely saying that God did it. I'm telling you that it's what is called the impossibility of the contrary. So by the fact that we look at the impossibility of the contrary, it is impossible, and I mean impossible, to argue anything without the Christian God. It's impossible to reason anything without the Christian God, because the possibility of the contrary. It's not just, God did it. It's not like that. It's just the logical necessity of the impossibility of the contrary. So if your worldview can't sufficiently explain, how logic occurs, how reason exists, or anything like that, then my worldview stands firm. That's what I'm telling you. I'm not just arguing God did it, because if you're going to say that that's a problem, and I don't really know why you would just say, well, God did it. I don't even know why you would even say that's a problem, because here's the thing. Ultimately, it's going to come down your worldview that no God did it. If we really, really get to the bare bones and really, really get to the foundations of your worldview, it's just going to say, well, nature did it, or it happened in this way, or no God did it, or something like that. But clearly, one of the two worldviews has to be true. Either God did it or no God did it. So if you're going to attack this idea that no God did it as a problem, then you're going to have to attack your worldview with the same sort of problem too.
Well, I think I said that. I mean, earlier in the discussion, I said that there's always a probability for chance, and I don't know every single thing. But whenever I talk to somebody about their worldview about God, anything they don't know, they don't need to know, because God knows, and that's ridiculous. Because when you're asked to provide evidence and asked to provide a proof, you have the cop out, you have the ace in your sleeve to say, well, God is the reason for this, and then I'm stuck saying, well, okay, how does that make any sense? And you say, well, because God revealed his revelation to me, and I've read the Bible and this and this and this. But that all falls on deaf ears, because it's not enough, and there's no real, and I know I'm going to say it again, there's no real evidence there that show, and either God did it or he didn't. And right now,
what is enough?
That shows that God did it.
What is enough? That's the question.
God coming down and doing it. God coming down and doing it. God physically, like he used to back in the day when Jesus was here on earth, healing miracles, doing things like that, curing the blind, curing the sick. Him coming down and revealing himself to people. That's the evidence. Him actually showing himself, not these little symbols and beliefs and fate. No, him coming down, parting the sky, and ending this fucking war-torn world we have, and having world peace. That's the fucking evidence right there. Him doing it, not all these, these things that have fate involved, which fate is just like kind of like hoping, fate is your fate. No, evidence is him coming down and doing it. Just like me, evidence, listen, if you go back to like the feet on the ground thing, if you wanted to see evidence of my feet hitting the ground every morning for 10 days straight, you could sit in my dorm room and watch my feet hit the floor every morning for 10 days straight. If I ask you to show me like God, I'm going to need him to come down and say something to me. I'm going to need him to come here, come back. I'm going to need Jesus to return sometime before I die. It's going to have to happen, because there's real evidence. Then there's these things that you say are evidence, which might not be evidence, which could be evidence, which I don't really like, because I don't know if it's the right evidence, which is all kinds of who knows what. And the real evidence at the end of the day is going to have to be physical, real evidence. Like if I tell you I'm making a Hot Pocket, and then I give you the Hot Pocket, well, there's a Hot Pocket there. That's the type of evidence I'm talking about. And that's going to sound crazy to you, but that's what I'm really talking about. Some real shit evidence.
That's the crux of the issue, though, because I can address this in a number of different ways. Here's the thing, man. When Jesus was here on earth and performed miracles and all that jazz, there were still people who still didn't believe.
Sure.
So how in the world are you going to say that would be necessary? So it would be necessary for Jesus to have to do that, correct?
Yeah.
That's how you would believe, right?
For me, not for everybody. For me, I'm talking about me, because we're talking about me and you, not the whole world. But I got a hard time believing. I mean, I know the world's pretty dumb and there's always going to be deniers, but I got a hard time believing if the skies parted and some big angel came down, people wouldn't start acting right. People wouldn't start being like, oh, that's God. I got a hard time believing they wouldn't believe that if you gave them some real evidence, or if you cracked the fucking world in half and let Satan come up here and start killing people. I'm thinking people would start thinking that's real. Because when you show people that stuff, they're gonna most of the time think it's real. I mean, for me, I can always speak for myself. For me, that's what it would take. And I think that if the skies parted, and this big thing came down on a chariot, and then and I would think most people would be like, "Holy shit, holy fucking shit." I mean, maybe too late by then, they probably go to hell. But I'm just saying that's what's going to take, and you probably know this. That's what it's going to take for a lot of people.
Well, here's the thing: thousands, and I mean thousands of people saw Jesus perform miracles, and you know what? They still put him on the cross.
Sure.
They still did it. So, if that happened back then, what makes you think that people would not, yeah, you may get a certain group of people that go, I believe now. But then you can get the other people who still have their heart set against God and will try to find an alternative explanation. Maybe they're so stuck on this nature thing, and they'd be like, well, that was probably just an illusion or some sort. Why wasn't that just a great hallucination rather than God? Like, for example, if you take one of the great scientists, his name is Francis Crick. He did not believe the universe was designed. He said we always got to keep in mind at the forefront of our thinking that the universe was not designed, but rather evolved. So if you have people who have their hearts outright set against God, that doesn't mean that they would believe it just because they saw something like that. They could try to just explain it away. That doesn't necessitate anything. Maybe certain people will believe it, but when you got people who have their hearts set against God, they're not going to believe it no matter what he does. They're not going to submit no matter what he does, no matter what is clearly seen in front of their eyes.
Well, no, I didn't say that they would. I said that I think, which means I don't know. I think majority of people would believe in God if he came down. That's not. Maybe you're right. No, you're right. There definitely would be some people that would still say, "Fuck, this is fake." I'm saying for me, Jacob Osborne, for me, that would work. I'd be like, "Holy shit, that would work." Even like a sign, even like a come down to me like personally or something, even something like that. But I mean, you're right. There would definitely still be people that say this is bullshit. But I think, by how powerful and grand God is, and Jesus is, if he came down and started doing shit, there wouldn't be too much to stand against him because he is, God. I mean, who's gonna do anything to God? I mean, we have weapons and armies and nukes, but that means nothing if someone's a God. So I don't think it would take too long for people to start getting their shit together or getting on their. I don't think it would take too long. A big problem with the Bible is, that's the only historical record of those things happening. And if you don't believe in the Bible, you don't even believe that shit's real. That's the issue. That's a big issue.
That's false, dude.
You say things like
that's false, dude.
How do you know what happened? There's no historical. There's really
that's false, dude. You clearly haven't studied this issue
because it's not real.
No, here's the thing. You say that there's the only historical record of these things, and that's not true at all.
What's the other evidence?
If you look at, have you heard of the writings of let me see, Pliny the Younger? Have you heard of the writings of Josephus? Have you heard of
damn it. Jesus Christ! Sorry. Somebody just left a fucking firework outside my dorm room. All right, go on. Oh God.
You cool, dude?
Yeah, dude, it sounded like a gunshot outside my fucking door. Someone dropped a fucking firework. Go ahead. You're good. You're the fuck out.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to laugh.
No, did you hear that pop?
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah, that shit sounded like, I thought it was a gunshot, dude. We just had somebody kill somebody on Facebook Live, like not too far from my fucking place here in Ohio. So it's kind of we're kind of sketchy around here.
Yes, but anyway, there is other historical evidence that these things happen. You gotta look at things like There's a Pliny the Younger. There's Josephus, a Jewish historian. Tacitus, Roman historian. I think this is pronounced Philogon. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Lucian, a Greek satirist, so Celsus, Roman philosopher. Dude, Dallas. Dude, there's other historical evidences, that go beyond just what is in the Bible. But here's the thing: even if the Bible was the only historical evidence, that wouldn't mean that it's insufficient. That's just like saying that if you only have one particular historical evidence of a figure in antiquity, that would make it insufficient. Then that's not how things work in contemporary history. Um, we have like not even close to the evidence of what's in. We have, of course, the Bible. We have that, and we have all the historical bits of evidence that I named off there. Did you know that the evidence from Jesus and his resurrection by far outnumber just about any known figure in antiquity? Like take Alexander the Great, for example. The earliest known evidences for his life didn't come to about, I think, like 300 to 500 years after he was already dead. But nobody questions, the things that he did in his life. Nobody questions it. The things which verify the Bible go far, far closer than that. Well within 50 years. So when you say that the Bible is just the only historical evidence that we have for these things, no, that's not true.
Well, Alexander the Great wasn't healing the blind and claimed to be the son of God, so that's kind of why people are hesitant to believe things that are in the Bible, especially when, like, for example, the Bible. I mean, and I don't know, what you feel. I mean, I really don't want to go down this road too much longer, but I'll tell you, the Bible says the world's like what, 6,000 years old. Now, come on, that's just not true because we know because we can actually test how old soil is and stuff. Now, you might think that's weird because we're just wrong in that regard.
That's wrong.
We know the Earth is not 6,000 years old because there were
Bible
dinosaurs.
does not say that's wrong. The Bible does not say the world is 6,000 years old. That's not what it says.
It doesn't say it's billions of years old. It doesn't say it's as old as we know.
It doesn't say either. All you see in Genesis is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You see that the earth is there in Genesis 1:1, but it doesn't say how long the earth was there. For all we know, God created the earth and it could have sat there for millions and billions of years before he put anything else into it. He could have made the earth and then started immediately on putting life and creation into the earth. We don't know. So to say that the Bible suggests that the earth is 6,000 years old, that's not true.
That's what every single religious person I talk to besides you has ever told me ever in my life, that the earth is 6,000 years old and that the flood is what messed up our tectonic plates and the flood is what messed up our soil, and that's why we can't really tell how old the earth is. And I also got a lot of Christians that tell me shit about dinosaurs because I don't know if there's any mention of dinosaurs in the Bible because I've never read the Bible. I've never read some. Actually, I have read some of it. Actually read Revelation, but some of it. And I have a hard time, with this whole dinosaur thing because there's just like no mention of it. And aside from that, the arbitrary, the biggest. Let me tell you the biggest reason. Let me tell you the biggest. Not even this whole like God thing that I think could be not real, could be whatever this agnostic thing I'm doing. That's far from really. I mean, that's really far from the reason why I can't ascribe to be Christian. Because I think I could make myself really get into the Bible, and because I really do want there to be a God, so I really think I could turn my life into that and really begin to like worship and do things like that and probably see the things you have claimed to see, like these signs and these things, these good things happening. But the real big reason are these arbitrary like rules in the Bible. And every time I say this, a Christian tells me, well, there's no rules in the Bible. But that's just not true, right? Because there are sins, and we all sin. None of us are perfect. That's why I say none of us are perfect. But there are definitely rules in the Bible, such as homosexuality. That's obviously a sin, right? I mean, that's obviously that obviously is forbidden by God. Which adultery, which is I think is shitty anyway, but that's obviously forbidden. Sodomy is something that I keep hearing is forbidden. I know the Sodom and Gomorrah story. I don't know if sodomy itself is forbidden, which doesn't make any sense to me anyway. A lot of things to me that just seem to make no fucking sense why they're forbidden, right, by God, because it seems like there's a lot more important things to worry about than if I'm sticking my dick in a girl's ass, or if two guys are fucking, or if I say goddamn, or if whatever. It just seems like these little petty things are just not important. And I just don't understand why God would pick these things of all things.
Ask you a question. How do you know that when God ordains certain things are wrong, that they are simply petty? Or do you know that, or do you just assume that?
They're petty to me, and that's all that matters. They're petty to me. That's what matters, because it's my worldview. If it's petty to me, it's petty, right? So maybe it's not petty to him. Maybe it's the biggest fucking deal in the world. But to me, it's petty. Petty as fuck. And that's all.
Why does your preferences go take priority? Like you want to have these sort of basis to believe in him. You want to have this sort of basis to accept him. How do you know that he isn't hiding himself from you because of your own pride, because of your own standards that you put before him? Because here's the bottom line. We don't judge God. He judges us. You don't put your pride above his divine authority. That's not how it works. But if you choose to do that, he will let you go your own way.
Well, I've done that, right? Because I've established what I like in my life, and I've established what's petty to me, and I just don't. And I never really got an answer to the question: why are those things so important? When really, in reality, in all honesty, I don't think. And maybe to you it's different because everything's subjective, like I said. Maybe to you,
here's the answer.
Maybe to you, gay people being married and gay people having sex is extremely, extremely offensive, and for some reason it affects your life. But it does not. It does not affect my life at all.
Well, here's the answer. Now, I don't have a deeper inclination into why God says these particular things.
Sure.
I believe one day he'll reveal that to us one of these days. And until then, I trust in his revelation. But as far as to why, the only thing I can do for now is to say, because he said so. And it may not be sufficient for you, but it is what it is. If you think that's not good enough, if you don't trust what he says, I mean, here's the thing. If you don't find that God says so to be good enough, then why do you find anything he says so to be good enough? The Bible said he created the heavens and the earth, and he's ordered the world in a number of different ways. Here's the thing. There's certain things to where you would accept that he said, like, for example, what will be a good one? Thou shalt not murder. That would be a good one. Murdering an innocent person for any reason is wrong. You would find no issue with accepting him saying that, but you would find issue with him saying other things. So why do you pick and choose which things you prefer he said over others?
Well, because it's all subjective. Because like we mentioned before, killing an innocent person is terrible, and killing an innocent person drives down society and harms people. Whereas being gay does nothing besides be gay, and you mind your own business and you be gay, and you just go, being gay is doesn't hurt anybody. Shouldn't be anyone else's business. It's not evil. You just mind your own business and you're just gay. Killing somebody is way different.
How do you know that homosexuality isn't an implication harmful to people and or to society? Because if you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, that society was overridden with homosexuality, and it was probably the most perverse culture you can imagine.
Yeah, but who is I mean, I'm gonna say something. Who is God to tell me how perverse I can be and what I can do? I mean, that's not how
Because
that's not
it's
how I
his
live
role.
my
It's
life.
what he says goes. That's why.
Yeah, but that's not how
And
I
you're
live
not
that's not how I live my life, man. I don't live my life. I'm not really big on authority, so I don't live my life arbitrarily how other people tell me to, or how a God tells me to, especially one where I haven't had a lot of evidence by it. And I really gauge things on if it hurts people or if it negatively affects me or someone that I
good.
love. And if something does not negatively affect me or someone I love, I don't care about it whatsoever.
Good.
And,
So it seems like you're telling me that even if you were to, at some point, for some reason, there's these people called misotheists. Do you know who they are?
I don't know who they are.
Misotheists are people who accept that God exists, but they hate his ways. And they outright make that very clear. Like, there's a misotheist that my friends and I talk to all the time here on Google Plus. He admits that God exists, but he hates his ways and how he's ordered the world. And he's right there with you on this homosexuality thing, that he doesn't think that that should be wrong, and he hates God for it. So even if you were to accept, if by some way or reason, miracle, maybe not a miracle, but if for any reason at all, you were to accept that God exists, then how would that necessarily bridge your dislike for God saying those other things are wrong? You can accept that God exists, but simply still have a problem with him making those other things wrong. Accepting that he exists isn't the end all and be all. Because here's the thing: even the devil knows God exists, but he clearly goes to war with God. So if you're going to say that you can have issues with God for this and this and this, then why would the issue be merely about him existing? It seems to me the issue goes beyond the scope of those things, right?
Well, yeah, I have a bigger issue. Well, all right, the first half of it is the evidence that we talked about, which we've talked about that extensively about the God thing. But even if I were to admit that God exists and I believe in God, it would be a false premise because I would just be doing it out of just whatever. Everybody's like, yeah, God exists, whatever. I believe in God. I would still have issues with the laws and I wouldn't follow them. Thus, I would be sinning. Thus, I would probably go to hell because I wouldn't follow the laws. Like if I don't agree with the laws, I don't follow them. Just like in real life. Okay, if I don't agree with the law, I don't follow it. It's why I smoke weed, right? So it would be like, okay, well, I mean, not that I'm gay, but if I was, I would be like, well, fuck this. I'm not going to let, some book and some religion tell me how to live my life or where I stick my dick. So fuck it. Like I just could never toe that line. And I commend you and those who can do that. Because whatever, I commend you for it because I couldn't do it. I guess I just have too much autonomy. I have a desire to have too much autonomy over my life and what I do. If you don't mind, can we kind of wrap this up because it's midnight and I have class in the morning. So I'm really, I kind of, this has been really fun, but can we kind of wrap it up a little bit?
I was actually just about to do that. As a matter of fact, um, give me just a sec. I'll be back in like a minute.
All right, no problem.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I appreciate the conversation, man. And the way I wrap up these conversations is, um, I just give the gospel message, man. I mean, for those out there who are listening, the bottom line is we're in a depraved state of sin. And here's the thing: we are all headed, or those rather who are not saved, who are not born again, are headed towards a path of destruction. And God does not desire that any person should perish. God does not take pleasure in the death of the wicked. Um, the fact is, we are depraved and we are without hope, and without Jesus Christ, there is no hope. Without Jesus, um, by the time we leave this world, that's a wrap, and there is no hope after that, and there will be no second chances. He gave his life on the cross so that you may be redeemed, that you may live with him, and that you may share paradise with him in heaven for eternity. He wants you to come to him in repentance. He wants you to lay down your sin and give his life wholeheartedly to him so much. And if you reject that free gift that he shed his blood so much for, then there is nothing but hopelessness for you. There is nothing but damnation for you. But that doesn't have to be that way. If you would just sincerely reach your heart out to him, sincerely, and I mean sincerely, make clear that he promises he will be an immediate reality in your life. He will be an immediate experience in your life. And you're a nice dude, man, and you're a very intelligent guy. And I'm going to continue to pray for you, man. I would hope that whatever is separating you from the Lord, he would touch your life in such a way that you find true peace in him, and that you may come to know him and may come to serve him. So with that said, I'm gonna just end it here. I want to just thank you for coming by, man. I appreciate the conversation, and I hope you may be able to come back. Excuse me. I hope you may be able to come back for more, man. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate the avenue, here you gave me to talk about this stuff. Because I really love talking about this stuff, and you're intelligent too, man. I mean, you brought a lot of good points. I'm glad that you were able to articulate your ideas. And if you're going to put this on YouTube, I don't know if you're able to do this or not, but if you could send me a copy of the video, I'd love to have it on my channel too and put it on my Facebook. But if you can't do that,
no problem, man. I'll send it to you right away. And actually, if you know how to download videos and things like this, you can download. You can do what you want. You got my full permission to do what you want with this video.
Okay. So, yeah, I wanted to get your consent on that. All right. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really like these intellectual talks, and I appreciate you saying a prayer for me and shit. And who knows, maybe one day I will be religious and we can have a more like-minded conversation. All
right, sounds good. I appreciate you coming by, man. So have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too, dude.
All right, with that said, everyone, that's a wrap. As always, please share this video, like or dislike. And yeah, there's going to be more coming soon. So take care, everyone. God bless and peace.